the biggest thing Ari Emanuel and Vince McMahon have ever done. Combining forces like this there's nothing like this. There's never been anything like this. People have been talking about this for a long time.
Demain soir, t'es chez moi, tabarnak! Roman, you are going down!
Stormbreaker again, Stormbreaker. Oh no, Jesus! Tiger Driver
81,035 fans tonight! You know what David Zaslav calls me? One Bill Phil. That's because I am the one true, genuine article in a business full of counterfeit bucks.
You know what this is right here? And then crushing.
Real glass.
Crushing the
Go
abdomen.
cry me a river.
Today I terminated Phil Brooks, CM Punk, for cause. This stems from a backstage incident at AEW All In last Sunday. Never in all that time have I ever felt until last Sunday that my security, my safety, my life was in danger at a wrestling show.
But I've changed, and this is the truth. I'm home.
And with that, we welcome you to Post Wrestling and Poison Rana's best and worst of 2023 as we rewind over the past 365 days to look at what wrestling gave us and what we want to give back. Hello, everybody. It is John Pollock alongside Ting, Braden Herrington, and Davie Portman.
Hello.
This is where Davie welcomes us all in.
Oh, hello. Hello.
There we go. Hello.
Oh, man, we're off to a
Forgot your
roaring
line.
start here. I mean, come
Hey,
on,
our internet's working, okay? Everything's
as
fine.
long as you guys can hear us, we're good to go. How is everyone doing tonight? Braden, is this just a quiet day for you two recording wise?
I think technically a third show of the day.
Yes.
We've been recording a lot today, but it's the start of the new year, but really it's for us, it's the end of the year, which is the most fun to look back.
Now it's New Year's Eve today, right?
Yeah. It starts today for us because the new year starts. So yeah, it's been a day.
The wrestling year officially begins once we complete this show, and we are going to be going through a monstrous list of 21 categories, and then we will also dust off the likely unlikely list that we put together last year with the help of our listeners, and we will see how we fared over this past year. But as we look at this daunting list, at what hour today, Wade, did you sit down and start this list?
Truthfully, I actually started on Friday night, so after Rewind to SmackDown, and then probably finished it maybe within minutes of us going live here. So.
Well, that's you go right up until the deadline. I mean, that is the criteria. I mean, everyone is a candidate until we go live. Braden, did you find this to be an easy or difficult year when it came to putting these together? Because I found this to be a more trying year when it came to going through some of these categories.
I found it a little bit easier, but we were lucky enough to be like at a lot of wrestling, maybe the most wrestling I've been to in like a calendar year. So in a way, like I was, this comes to mind. This comes to mind. When it got down to maybe some of the nitpicking that today to finish the list and try to get through it. But it also made a nice afternoon where I was just like and reminiscing of like all the bad stuff, as fun as it is. Yeah, it was okay.
Okay, well, your internet is already starting to turn heel on us as we're about 5 minutes into this show. So I'm going to suggest that if this continues, you guys go to audio first, and then we will go from there, because we do not want to have I can't go through any more internet disasters in my lifetime after Friday. So we will see how this goes. But with that said, we have 21 different categories to go through.
And people can follow along, of course, when they look at the show descriptions here. First of all, we want to welcome everybody watching us live, all of our patrons here at youtube.com/postwrestling, postwrestlingcafe.com, as well as Poison Rana's Patreon. So thank you guys all for being here. Look up the categories, and then we encourage everybody in the chat room to give us your picks as we go through the categories ourselves.
So we are going to start off with best female wrestler. And last year, the picks included Davey and Wei choosing Bianca Belair. I went with Shuri from Stardom, and Braden had Jamie Hayter, who I don't think is going to be repeating this year, given setbacks. But let us start things off with Braden Herrington with best female wrestler of 2023.
Well, hopefully you can hear me. I'm going with someone that's pretty straightforward and just been a star this year, which is really, I'd say, off of her WrestleMania performance, just as if is just so like star making. But she's just become someone that I'm seeing in like day-to-day memes on social media that's like not wrestling related. I'm seeing her like break outside the world of wrestling, and people, non-wrestling fans, coworkers of mine are like, oh, like who's this Rhea Ripley I keep hearing about or keep seeing? So she's got like obviously a distinct look, but this year I think she really broke out as just one of the biggest stars, and that her and Dom as this team are just like, yeah, they've been something this year that has just been pretty special for WWE. And I'd say her beating Charlotte really cemented her legacy, but I'm going with Rhea.
All right, one vote for Rhea Ripley. We will see how well she does. Let's go to Davey next.
I don't think there's been someone from like January to December who really stood out to me. But I would say I think Becky Lynch would be my pick. I think she, despite kind of being away from the like title picture for the whole year, she's kept herself relevant. I thought she had a tremendous cage match with Trish. Like Trish at this stage in her career, coming back and putting on one of my favorite matches of the year, actually. And then you had the Tiffany Stratton feud in NXT, which I thought, like Becky, big ratings Bex or whatever you call her, like brought a lot of eyes to NXT and put on some really good matches with Tiffany there. So my pick is Becky Lynch.
I think Becky quietly had a really great year, and I think I look towards the cage match stood out, and that NXT run where you saw like she was a significant difference maker, and we've sort of seen where NXT like numbers wise has like come down from that peak. And I went with somebody like I admittedly did not follow as much Stardom as I would have liked to this year. I know like Tam Nakano and Julia had really great years, but I went North American with Athena this year because she had. According to Cage Match, 10 of her top 15 matches occurred this year. And this was on a platform that so few people, I think she was largely handicapped by being on Honor Club, because I think if she has this reign in AEW, she's probably people's hands down pick for this year in terms of match quality, a several month-long storyline with Billy Starks. She had the match with Willow Nightingale at Death Before Dishonor. She had matches with Mercedes this year. Really underrated street fight with Kiera Hogan. And again, I think Ring of Honor, it has so struggled to stay in people's just consciousness this year. Athena has been that thread all year long, holding this belt that seems to have been the strongest promotion for checking out Honor Club. And therefore, I went with Athena. Just small platform, but you take her out of the mix, I don't know how much buzz ROH would have beyond just the pay-per-views that would come every, like in terms of a week-to-week character. It was Athena. Wei, we go to you with your pick for best female wrestler.
I too went with Rhea Ripley this year, and it's interesting because like I think when you're talking about best wrestler or best tag team or best male wrestler, the qualifications might be a little bit different for everybody. And in fact, I feel like my qualifications for choosing best female wrestler are very different from maybe my qualifications for choosing best wrestler. Because all that is all to say, I'm not choosing Rhea Ripley because of her in-ring, sort of a catalog this year. I don't know. There's there are good matches, I think, and notable matches, but nothing I would really consider on sort of like the, I don't know, that top of the year list whatsoever. But for me, her standout sort of I guess attributes of 2023 were her ability to just be a constant presence on WWE Raw predominantly, and that is extremely unusual for somebody in the women's division. To me, she's somebody who has broken through the ceiling of a WWE women's division, even in ways that we haven't seen from maybe even any of the four horsewomen prior to her. She is an integral part of the men's storyline, while at the same time feeling like this incredible unstoppable threat threat in the women's division. And because she, to me, at this point, is so important to the company as a whole, I granted her the best wrestler female award this year.
Yeah, and like quietly has been someone that you look at during the Paul Levesque era. I mean, we can contrast her to before that, and like here was someone that everyone tabbed with potential, but was, I would say, floundering on the main roster. Didn't have a defined role. There were like these big gaps of where she might disappear, and it just seemed to be as though they were, you know, not getting anywhere near that level of potential that was bestowed upon her for those that were high on her when she came up to the main roster. So there you have a diverse set of picks there with the best women's wrestler. So let's move on now to best tag team. And last year it was a clean sweep with everyone picking FTR. Davey, kick things off for best tag team of 2023.
I found this one very difficult because similar to the women, I don't think there's been any team that have had like a consistent, like great run throughout the whole year. So I'm going to go through for the team that maybe had my favorite moments of the year and that kind of thing. And that is Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. I thought, like, you know, the first tag team main event on WrestleMania since WrestleMania 1, them winning that match, an incredible story with the Bloodline and the Usos, and, you know, going on to have some quite fun matches after that. They had obviously the whole like Judgment Day feud, that whole like Philly street fight with the hockey sticks and all that. Yes, it was a short run, and I think there was probably a lot more left on the table, but for me, it was kind of the standout tag team kind of run and moment of 2023.
Let's go with Way with your pick for best tag team.
This one, I agree, was a bit tough for me this year as well, just because I guess I haven't really thought about tag team wrestling as much this year as maybe in previous years, and so I'm picking a team that I actually feel had a better 2022 than even their 2023. But nonetheless, in my mind, it's hard for me to pick a more consistent team this year than FTR. I think they are, anytime they're on screen, I think they live up to the expectations that you have of them. And, you know, this year they've had notable, series with Bullet Club Gold on television. And overall, I think they've done a good job of at least maintaining the idea that AEW is known for great in-ring tag team wrestling, when I don't know if the rest of the division has been as as much of a leader in that regard. So I went FTR.
I also went with FTR this year. I would state that this was more of a year where, even with the addition of Collision, like you would think like this was going to be one of the acts that would greatly benefit from those additional 2 hours. And they did. You had the matches with Jay White and Juice Robinson in particular, that 58-minute match that I just thought was incredible. They had the way back at Wrestle Kingdom last year with Bishamon, the Young Bucks at All In just a few weeks ago, the Fight Without Honor that they had. And from a rating standpoint, outside of that debut Collision, which was Punk's return, the second highest Collision was their match with Adam Cole and MJF. So I think that I agree with you, Way. I don't think they had the year that 2022 was, but they were my pick as well. My short list did include Owens and Zayn. And since we don't have a category for trios, I'd also throw in like a runner-up in Tanahashi, Okada, and Ishii, who held the never open-weight six-man tag titles for a good portion of the year. And I did not see one poor title defense of the 7 that they had. They were just excellent trios matches involving titles that I could not possibly care about. So we go to Braden now with your best tag team.
Yeah, I agree with. Well, first I agree with everyone, because like this year tag team,
you have to make a pick. You can't agree with all of us.
No. It's just like this year was like different for tag team wrestling. It wasn't quite like, you could say the Usos finally getting that WrestleMania moment, let alone a main event with Lil Uzi Vert. Like that was epic and everything. But I'm going with FTR as well, because they did have like quite a run. They did the Tokyo Dome, they did Wembley, and they even trademarked CMFTR. So they're even really smart on top of it. And a highlight moment was at Wembley when the whole crowd started singing "Cash Has Got a Gun." It was very, very poetic. Never forget. Wow. So
talk about a controversy that was like going into All In, and after All In, that was completely forgotten about.
Yeah, please don't shoot him was also another chant that was very loud in our section. But yeah, they still had a great year. That Collision, they were like the draw of AEW for a bit, and then they kind of did dip off part of the year, but they were still very impressive and the best tag team this year.
And they weren't forced to leave their families on Saturday night on Collision, prevailing over House of Black. So that's nice. They didn't have to leave their families. All right. Those were our picks for best tag team. We're now going to go to best male wrestler of the year. Last year, we had a variation of picks. Way and Braden chose John Moxley. I went with Will Ospreay, and Davey chose MJF. So this time around, let us start off with Wei Ting. Who was your wrestler of the year? Male wrestler of the year.
My well, a lot of some honorable mentions, I suppose. Maybe I'll just kind of leave those to maybe some of you guys. But for me, my pick this year for best male wrestler was pretty much purely based off of in-ring quality, and that, of course, is Will Ospreay. It's hard for me to think of any wrestler who might have had the year that this man has had in terms of quality and in terms of, I think, widespread sort of appearances that he has had. Obviously, when we talk about best matches of the year period, you might be able to take your pick between either of the options that you might have with Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega. But beyond that, it's having matches in other promotions, with a Speedball and an Impact, or a Naomichi Marufuji and Noah. It got to the point where I think we were talking about these promotions only because Will Ospreay happened to, be taking part in them. And that's the type of journeyman quality that I think is so rare in professional wrestling. And obviously, with this being his last year as part of New Japan, and seemingly choosing to commit to locking himself down to an AEW commitment following this, maybe that was the reason why he went so hard. And by going so hard, he certainly earned himself, to me at least, title of best wrestler of the year.
All right. We'll go to Braden next for best male wrestler. Are you going with Will Ospreay, or do you have another choice?
I am going with Will Ospreay, man. Like he's been incredible for the last few years, but it's like Wade just said it. It's like this guy even made me watch Impact, and I did. And the match with Speedball and the one with Josh Alexander, both incredible. All his stuff in New Japan, all the stuff he did with AEW, and yeah, I'm selfishly as a fan am happy that I'm going to get to see him more in 2024 and beyond. I hope we get him main eventing against like Danielson or Kenny again in Wembley. I hope this guy like becomes even bigger because yeah, every time this guy wrestled, he had a match of the year candidate. Like you could do a whole list of just the matches this guy did. And again, being spoiled and being able to watch him wrestle quite a few times this year, like he's just a spectacle. And he's also great to show your friends who are like aren't super into wrestling because he's like so like spectacular and mesmerizing to watch in the ring. So yeah, Will Ospreay bell to bell is one of the best. And when he started finally cutting promos in AEW, the bruv thing might be like, overdone over there in the UK. But when he did that on TV, a lot of Americans and people watching are like, oh, this guy's actually okay on the microphone. This like weird, what do you call it? Like bruvy.
Yeah, Brits don't just sip tea and eat
pits
and talk politely.
Exactly. Yeah, it made me go like, hey, wait a second. There's something there. So I'm all for Will Ospreay. Huge fan.
Davey, was this past year, with due respect to Johnny Gargano and Andrade, was it Will and Chill?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think this year, like, it would be maybe more fun looking for a second place because I think Will Ospreay kind of had it in the bag halfway through the year. Just so many like absolute classics. I mean, I would love to like maybe suggest next year doing a TV wrestler of the year or something like that because we can't ignore the likes of Gunther and
Orange Cassidy
and Danielson in the Continental Classic. Considering how many injuries and time Danielson was off this year, he had a tremendous year as well. But like Ospreay just sealed the deal like pretty early on this year and really took some beating.
Yeah, I thought that this was just a year that was. It was just such an incredible year for Will Ospreay. And when you look at some of the other years, like just looking this past week at Bryan Danielson's year, that was phenomenal. I would argue this was one of the best years in his career in terms of the matches he had, the wide variety of who he had those with. Zack Sabre Jr. had a stellar year. Ilya Dragunov, I mean, he was just fantastic on NXT all year long. If you're going to Mexico, Volador Jr., I thought had a really, really excellent year, but this was the year of Will Ospreay. You could make the argument he had the best match in New Japan this year with Omega, the best match in AEW, if you want to consider it that, with the rematch with Omega, one of, if not the best match in Impact history with Mike Bailey. He had matches in Rev Pro this year that included Shingo Takagi, Leon Slater, Gabe Kidd, Luke Jacobs. He went to Noah with Marufuji, and then had, you know, some real like under the radar classics with El Fantasmo in the G1, Shota Umino, the All In match with Jericho that didn't have much of a build attached to it. But I mean, you guys could probably attest, like that to me was a match that really did end up standing on its own at that show on top of it. So, I mean, this was an in-ring career or in-ring year that was unbelievable when you look at just all that he did and the different places and the different opponents that he did it with. And this is going to be a major turning point in his career to see how he transitions to being kind of a week-to-week character in a promotion with AEW, and what involvement he will have, what his presence will be in New Japan in 2024 on top of it.
It was actually pretty incredible in Wembley to see how many people like knew him. And it wasn't just like, you know, that pop from Essex, England. Oh, he's one of us. It like everyone's singing along with the song, chanting Ospreay. And for someone who isn't like on national TV really in the UK, like, and I expected a bunch of people going to that show were like, oh, look, Chris Jericho, the wrestling's in town, that kind of thing. But the reception he got there, like clearly, like he was the hometown boy. He was a hometown boy.
Davie boy.
Was so much more of a star than I was expecting at that show
this year. And like, sorry, go for it, John.
Well, I was going to ask, like, you guys as well, just being there, like when we got set for All In tickets to go on sale for next summer, like I think everyone had like tempered expectations, and I would say like they've gotten off to a phenomenal start, and you at least have to give some of that credit to Ospreay's announcement and the belief that he's going to have a major role on that show. Like I do give him like some of that credit for the tickets being so strong out of the gate.
I do feel that maybe it is going to be Danielson Ospreay.
I hope so.
As the match at All In. The fact that both of them are kind of saying, I will be there at Wembley next year, and they're kind of the two. It's like, oh, well, All In tickets are on sale. You want to see Danielson, he's going to be there.
I mean, if Danielson's eye acts up again, you got Kenny hopefully back maybe by that time to do like a third one. But Danielson Ospreay is enough to make me look at my bank statements and look at the flights, because like that one is a match that I think will gain a lot of people's attention to if they announce that eventually. But yeah.
I think 2023 will be interesting for him because we've seen glimpses of his mic work throughout the year, but within AEW on a sort of weekly, national TV product, it's going to be at a different level. So we might not see the same in-ring output from him, but I think we'll probably be talking at the end of the year next year about how good he's been, or maybe not good he's been, as a weekly actual character with the microphone every single week. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he does.
Or we'll talk about, man, the Hardy family Ospreay office. What is this? I mean, he signed a contract with Matt Hardy and he didn't realize.
Will TV. Can't wait for it. You know what, though? You mentioned Danielson like as somewhat of an honorable mention. Like, yeah, he's just had an incredible year. And MJF. Like,
go look at his cage match and like how many of his like best, like highest rated matches occurred this year. Like the Zack Sabre Jr. match, the
strap match,
the MJF match, which I mean, we will get into later. That may come up later as well. But he's for a guy that had his injuries and such, like, dude, he had a phenomenal year, and he was just going through the ratings this week. Like, he was a difference maker on Collision over these last few months. I think you take Danielson out of the mix post CM Punk. I think Collision takes a much bigger hit than it did.
Yeah, he had a fantastic year. There's been a lot of great wrestling this year, and it was a clean sweep for Ospreay. But Davey kind of mentioned, it's like, but who else was good? Because there was like those three guys were definitely the ones that
Orange Cassidy this year.
Yeah. Like, again, there's a bunch of them. Yeah.
Next category is Best Feud. And in 2022, I went with the Briscoes against FTR. The three of you chose MJF versus CM Punk. So in 2023, I will start this one off. And I had a few options here. number one was again, like we don't focus as much on Lucha, but it was a huge year for CMLL, and Rocky Romero and Volador Jr. had a series of matches this year going back to January when Romero won the historic welterweight title and held it for most of the year. And this included losing a hair versus hair match to Volador Jr. back in May. And then they had a 2 out of 3 falls match in June. And then it was up until the end of the year where he lost the title to Mascara Dorada 2.0. So I just thought, like, match quality wise, like these guys had like a great program, and it was, you know, a big deal in CMLL this year. So I wanted to give that as my honorable mention, but my feud of the year, and this, it overcame maybe one of the most puzzling angles of the year, but the fact both men came out as strong as they did was a testament to the work produced. Hangman Page against Swerve Strickland, which I think they put together. Their chemistry is incredible, culminating in one of the greatest Texas death matches I have ever seen, and on the heels of one of the nuttiest angles ever, involving a home break-in and tease of a child abduction. But at the end of it, you have Swerve Strickland that feels like this guy is going to explode in 2024 if they don't fumble things. And I think that Hangman Page, in a weird way, this did reignite him, even with 2 losses to Swerve, that I think he's had this disappearing act where it's just been a lack of consistency on programming. But to me, this should be a world championship rivalry. And that's when I think they should revisit this. Although based on television this week, it looks like they will be involved in some form or fashion coming out of, in the early part of this year. Next, let's start with Davie next with best feud of the year.
Well, it coincides with my tag team of the year. It's the whole Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens bloodline story, a bleed over from 2022. But like, I just thought this whole story was told perfectly. You know, we were there in Montreal for one of the most incredible reactions I've ever been involved with at a wrestling show, with that SmackDown taping, and we heard the Tabernacle line on this brilliant intro Way made, and
John made it, actually.
John made, okay. Well done, John. And through to like AI. Elimination Chamber, which was also like just such an awesome reaction. But you know, you had the dilemma: are we going with Cody or are we going with Sami for WrestleMania? And I think having the Usos in a much deserved like main event as well against Sami and Kevin, you had the whole tie-in with, you know, Sami and Kevin coming out in their PWG inspired gear, and just the culmination, like the story ended that night. You had the good guys won. It was a feel-good moment. I got all emotional watching it. The bar we were watching it at was going crazy. And you know what I respected is they ended the story there. Cody's still trying to end his, but like both Sami and Kevin were like, nah, we're done with that. We're moving away from that. And I just thought it's quite rare to like stick the landing and move on. And I thought I just had such a good taste in my mouth after that whole feud. Loved it.
But were they WrestleMania headliners on night one? That's the Chris Healy debate, I guess.
I would say so.
Braden, your feud of the year. Are you going similar or different?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Sami comes to mind because it was just so good and like it was so natural. But I kind of agree with you, John, and that's where I went. I don't know how, but they managed to turn around Swerve going into someone's house and looking into the baby's crib, where I went, man, I know it's wrestling and all that, but like that's pretty, you know, Randy Orton, Triple H, home invasion vibes or something. And they still managed to turn it all around where, like you said, at the end of the year, like I cannot wait till these two fight again. And hopefully it's for the title, and hopefully it's an exploding barbed wire cage match, because I don't know what else these guys can do to each other. The guy literally drank his blood, so they might have to legit murder each other to end this feud. And I can't wait to see what happens in 2024. So yeah, Hangman and Swerve is my feud of 2023.
2 votes for Hangman Page and Swerve. Where are you going for feud of the year?
I went with Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns as my feud of the year. I think starting from the Rumble until WrestleMania, what we're really talking about is Cody's story, and I think it's been wonderfully presented. I think on the mic, as a big WrestleMania level main event babyface, I think Cody has been the best person that they've had in this spot for years. Incredibly consistent through promos. I feel maybe the biggest sort of compliment I can give to him is the fact that I was one of several people who, were arguing for Sami Zayn to be somehow injected into that main event scene at WrestleMania. And the fact that Cody did such a great job of handling that situation, to the point where by the time WrestleMania came around, I was feeling perfectly fine with him as the challenger. And in fact, feeling disappointed coming out of WrestleMania that he didn't win. I think that's a huge accomplishment just for Cody Rhodes himself. This is a feud that is still ongoing. And the fact that, in my opinion, there's still enough interest in this that I can see as many people wanting this match instead of The Rock versus Roman Reigns. I think it continues to be a major testament to how hot the program still is. So to me, it's the feud with the biggest stakes attached to the WWE right now, and maybe by extension, all of professional wrestling. So for that reason, it's my choice for feud of the year.
All right, a diverse set of picks for best feud of the year, and we are getting a little bit too positive and glowing about the past year. So let's get into some awful stuff from the past year. The next category is worst feud of the year. Looking back, we had Braden Herrington going with Braun Breaker and Joe Gacy, a classic.
Wow.
Myself, I went with Dexter Loomis and The Miz, and Way and Davey, proper representing Matt Hardy versus AFO. The Andrade family office.
Wow. Wasn't there a year someone picked like someone versus Nia Jax versus anyone?
That's you.
Yeah.
You went with Matt Hardy versus anyone.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, Davey was more specific that year with Matt Hardy versus Hangman Page. So both of Davey has gone Matt Hardy 2 years in a row. We will see if he breaks the streak this year. But let us start off with Wei Ting with worst feud of 2023.
Okay, yeah. I went with the Outcast versus anybody. I suppose if you want to call it that.
That's the spirit way.
If you want to be more specific, I suppose the Outcast versus anybody in AEW as part of this whole Outcast versus AEW original storyline. I say this with big terms because I don't think it's ever been properly defined. I feel like this has been so half-assed, a lot of this has already been blocked up from my memory, so apologies if maybe my own recollection of it isn't the most concise, but to me it comes down to some of the most generic heel promos I've seen, unfortunately, namely from their leader Soraya, who I had really high hopes for in AEW. She was somebody who I feel like under maybe the sort of lesser restrictions in AEW, it's where we would get to see what she was actually capable of. Unfortunately, I think those restrictions, the lack of restrictions probably made her a lot more complacent, and what we got instead felt incredibly uninspired. Very little substance to any of the segments nor the actions of the group beyond perhaps like a half-assed attempt at being the NWO, except with spray paint that didn't seem to work half the time. There was no real conclusion to this entire story. It
wasn't even the best green spray paint gimmick this year, because I think Trey Miguel had like a better heel run with this idea.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And it took, thankfully, timeless Toni Storm to somehow break through out of it with her own creation that has, clearly been much better thought out for at least her role to have come to an end. We'll see if Harley Cameron does any better with the Outcast 2.0.
Okay, maybe if you insert a butcher's knife, it'll have a turnaround in 2024. Braden, what was the worst feud you saw this past year?
There was a lot of like little ones that, like, Outcasts weren't that great this year, but I'm going with one that was pretty big, which is the Bloodline and the Bloodline, I guess, the Bloodline implosion of themselves.
Tribal combat.
Yeah, whatever way you want to twist it is how like the Bloodline disbanded and still were feuding with each other, which led to the SummerSlam tribal combat, like you said. And I just really didn't like the way everything. I feel like if Cody just finished the story, the Bloodline stuff the rest of this year would have made a lot more sense. You could easily go into stuff with Dwayne and The Rock and all this stuff, but instead Roman retained, and then it just, I don't know, it kept like, it felt very recycled this year, where like kind of prior with the Sammy stuff, it was like the most red hot thing. But by the end of it, and still, like, I feel like they're just kind of fixing it. Roman's only wrestled a handful of times this year, and I get that he's a special attraction, but the feud itself with the Usos turning on each other and everything, it just was so repetitive and boring. So I am picking that one.
As strong as they have made Solo Sikoa, like, I thought they just did a number with Jimmy Uso this year. Like, it just made no sense of him joining his brother to take out Roman. Then he cost Jay the match, and now he's back with Roman. And the explanation was, I didn't want you to win the title and get poisoned by this power. I don't know. For me, Jimmy Uso just was not handled with any kind of care for a guy. As you go back to WrestleMania and the fallout of those four and where they went in their respective years, I think Jimmy a very clear bottom of that pecking order.
Especially, like, they want to have the one-on-one match this year at WrestleMania. Like, cool, go for that. But the way they kind of split them, it just didn't work. I'm happy for Jay. Jay's killing it. Yeet. But like, yeah, I really didn't like this storyline or feud.
Davey, what was the worst feud of the year?
I went Chris Jericho versus anybody. But to be more specific, I will say the Adam Cole feud, which I thought was awful. Like, Adam Cole had just come back from like a really serious injury and immediately pulled into the Jericho vortex. They had that horrible angle with,
destroying
Britt.
Or making Britt watch.
Yeah, the Outcast beating up Britt and all that. But just every feud this year with Jericho, it's held people back, I felt like, and just baffling decisions for me. Like, bringing Will Ospreay in to have a huge match at Wembley Stadium about an hour away from his home, in his home country, and he gets put with the biggest heel manager, Don Callis, to go against Jericho, who was heel 2 weeks ago, but for the sake of this Wembley match has turned babyface. It was completely backwards, and I've been left scratching my head with pretty much every single Chris Jericho feud last year. But the Adam Cole one led to an awful match, I thought.
But Sabu.
Yeah, and why? Why Sabu?
And he was there for 2 seconds.
Remember that.
And then he left. He was there for like 2 seconds.
All right. Well, there is Davey's choice, Chris Jericho versus anyone, but he'll narrow it down to Adam Cole. I want to give an honorable mention to the program that don't ever ask me to recap this because I can't, but I know I don't like it. And that is Miro versus his wife, CJ Perry. I've hated all of this and how long it's gone on and the logic of you're supposed to stay at home. I'm the breadwinner, but she wants to manage. So he's going to destroy everyone because the rift is that he has sacrificed his love for his wife, for his God, in order to push him further in his career. And now they're back together. I think it's been awful. But at least I can pretty much go through my viewing each week and not think too much about this. A program that was like heavily pushed all summer long and culminated at SummerSlam. Ronda Rousey versus Shayna Baszler, a feud that had a different babyface depending on which Monday you tuned in to see the buildup. It was very, very clunky with the character work, with the promos. They had one great video package going into it on the week of where they did salvage this. The match did not work. And I think even worse, that to me really like underscores this, is that at the end of this feud, and this being Ronda's farewell, Shayna got nothing out of this. Like, this win to me was totally forgotten about, and she is right back in the same place she was anyway. And you can put that on her. You can put that on the handling of her afterwards. But the result is she's in the exact same place where this win should have placed her into some more significant role, or someone else should have been in this role. But it wasn't a great feud. And I think that hampered the match with the audience, and the rule set that they included at SummerSlam, I think, confused people too. So all around, I just think like Ronda Rousey left WWE on a whimper, and it didn't really enhance Shayna Baszler in any meaningful way. So that was my worst feud of the year. Next, we are going to go to a category best non-wrestling media. So this is not a traditional wrestling show, but some piece of media, whether it be a book, a documentary, some kind of digital output that was out there. So last year we had our list of winners, including Braden with the Jerry Lawler, Andy Kaufman episode of Tales from the Territories, Davey with the Broken Skull Sessions hosted by Steve Austin. I had Blood and Fire, the biography of the Sheik by Brian Solomon, and Way chose the Bray Wyatt White Rabbit campaign. So for this year, let us kick things off with Davey with best non-wrestling media.
Come sail away. It's the wrestlers. Nice. I was a bit late to this documentary, but basically had so many people coming to my bar who know I'm the wrestling guy and have you watched this Netflix show, The Wrestlers? And they're telling me all about it. Oh, it's about, did you know about OVW and stuff? And I was kind of a bit like, yeah, I know about it, and didn't really have much interest. And then watched it and just absolutely fell in love with this show. I thought it had such a great cast of characters, and just a really interesting look at the, this sort of indie wrestling scene
in Kentucky.
Yeah, it kind of brought prominence to someone like, Haley J and our man Cash Flow,
and wrestling legend Al Snow.
I loved the whole stuff with the other promoter, like the Radio Money guy, and how he started off as a bit of a heel and then had his seizure and becomes like a big baby face by the end of the show. I just thought it was a really great documentary, and I'd love to see a season 2, whether it's about OVW moving forwards or another company or something. I thought it was great fun and achieved its goal of bringing more eyes to wrestling, because I've had so many people talk to me about it who have either never watched wrestling or completely checked out of wrestling at the end of the Attitude Era, who tuned back into this and have been asking for other things to see. So it was definitely successful.
Yeah, and just based on some of OVW shows, it does look like they got a bit of a bump out of this beyond just people watching it. It does seem like it did assist OVW in some tangible way. So I guess it'll be curious if they get a second season out of this.
It sounds like they're working on something. It also would be interesting for the same people to possibly go somewhere else, do a season on another Fed in a different state or something. I think doing a bunch of that would be pretty interesting, but I was very late to it as well, but it was very interesting, very fun to watch.
Demand Lucha on Netflix.
That would be awesome. That don't even get me started. I mean, if we could pick on this list best indie Fed, we'd pick Demand Lucha here in the 6th.
Man,
but
Big Tom could be a breakout star on Netflix.
oh, he's gonna lose it that you mentioned him here. Our friend Big Tom works security at Demand Lucha, and
Imagine a guy called Tom who's incredibly big.
He's
and that's Big Tom.
He's bigger than any indie wrestler I've ever
Thanks
seen.
for the description.
And
imagine a guy named Tom, and he's big,
he's really big. He does this angle where he's a security guard. He got an angle, but John, you were with us, and after that happened, where he
counted the now.
Yeah, clothesline, like Space Monkey or something. Pollock, you were like, great job. And our friend was just like, oh my God, wrestling journalist legend John Pollock just said I did a good job in the ring. So.
I think he tore his rotator cuff.
Yeah, he got injured doing that.
Pinfall or something.
I'd also say best indie wrestler of 2023, Gringo Loco.
Oh yeah,
he's been killing it on the indie scene, and we've been seeing a whole lot of him. But sorry, I forgot how we got there, but
well, in a roundabout way. I'll go next here. So I am generally the book person, so I'm going to dedicate mine to some of the wrestling books that I read this year, and there were several good ones. You had Todd is God by Todd Gordon, which I would state is a really interesting read for an alternative look at how things went down from ECW, because I think a lot of the history of ECW is contained with the Paul Heyman side of things. And this is Todd Gordon was very, very influential in ECW up until 97, and the guy that financed the entire thing. So, I mean, Todd Gordon is a very boisterous personality, I will say, but there was a lot of interesting stories in this one. Flowers for Adrian by John Elul was to me the most like comprehensive look at Adrian Adonis, a very tragic death when he was, out in the Maritimes, and they were avoiding an animal and crashed over a 4th of July weekend and died at a very young age. But it's a really, really well-researched book. The Woman Who Would Be King by Medusa and Greg Oliver. Really excellent book, especially from like a female's perspective, coming up in an era where there was just so fewer numbers of them and what she had to encounter. But my choice was The Last Real World Champion by Tim Hornbaker on Ric Flair. And I thought what was a big asset to this book was the fact that Ric Flair was not involved in this project. So you got a much more kind of unvarnished look at Ric Flair. First of all, Tim Hornbaker his research is phenomenal of the lengths he goes to. This is like the detail that he goes into, in particular of the Mid-Atlantic days and by extension, Jim Crockett Promotions. Like that is a huge part of the book. It's incredible detail that he goes into. And then up until, everything involving Ric Flair throughout the 90s and 2000s up until the present, and does like touch upon like the resurfacing of the plane ride from hell allegations on top of that. So to me, definitely the of the documentaries I have seen of Flair's own book, I would say this is the most extensive look at Ric Flair. And I think it helped that it was from that it came from outside of like Ric Flair's point of view. So that would be my choice. Wei, what was your best non-wrestling media?
This year I chose The Iron Claw. This is, of course, the film that a lot of us have been talking about, a lot of us have reviewed. It's not a perfect movie for a wrestling fan especially, but I think the fact that it was made at all and with as great of a cast as it had, I think ultimately did a great service for bringing one of wrestling's biggest tragedies to a larger audience. Overall, I thought it was a very well done movie. Yes, it's not completely true to, I think, the reality of the situation, but it's also the medium that I think dictates that. And through interviews that we've heard with the director, the question we have to ask is, does it stay true to the essence of the family story? And I think in being able to focus everything on the survival of Kevin Von Erich, despite everything, I think was ultimately very effective. So particularly the actors who play Fritz and Kevin, to me, were standouts as well. So I felt it was my best non-wrestling media this year.
And Braden, take this one home. Best non-wrestling media.
Yes, Chef Wei, because I also picked The Iron Claw. I took my younger brother, who also loves wrestling, to see this, as weird as it could be. Hopefully we're not cursed, but this movie was awesome. Like you kind of said it, Wei, like as a wrestling fan, you're like nitpicking little things, but you also, I loved Zac Efron's basically promo in the first few minutes of the movie on his date, explaining what wrestling is and all that. I'm like, wow, you summed up what wrestling is in like a minute there. It was fantastic. But the portrayals they did were so entertaining. The Rush Tom Sawyer bit where they're somewhat inventing entrance music against the Freebirds. I also really loved that part of the movie. I was losing it in the theater. So yeah, The Iron Claw. I love any movie about wrestling, but this one, like, really giving the wrestler a run for its money as being like up there. And I think just anyone who isn't a wrestling fan watching this would be super entertained, because Jeremy Allen White, yes, Chef, he was amazing. And so was Zac Efron. Like, I know you're a huge High School Musical fan.
Yeah,
and a lot of people still see him in that. But like, man, I thought he was just so good in this movie. Honorable mention to Dark Side of the Ring, The World According to Marty Jannetty. Oh, boy. That was one of my favorite episodes as well. But yeah.
Yeah, John.
Yeah.
Sorry, John. Next time your accountant asks, if wrestling's real or not, just show him that Zac Efron, Kevin Von Erich clip on the date. Leave, have a coffee, come back, and be like, "Cool, can we talk taxes now?" Sorted.
Yeah, that almost made my list for something. That would have been worst interview this year.
We have a couple of runner-up picks, or actual couple picks from the chat room as well. Black Mega Man says Hey EW is his pick for best non-wrestling media this year. Brian says Hey EW is his runner-up, but he picks Monster Factory. Also, John Cena picks Stone Cold Takes on America.
Sand Mountain.
Oh man, that would come on after NXT, and we would kind of get into it. This one specific episode where he goes to Sand Mountain. Oh man,
what if we got Bret Hart Takes on Canada?
I would watch it. It starts at his bar. I would watch it.
And Jake Olenor also said Ric Flair, the last real world champion by Tim Horbaker.
Oh, so John's pick.
Well, we didn't have enough categories last year, so we have expanded at the request of Davie Portman to include best entrance. So this is a first-time category. So Davie, why don't you first of all explain the addition of this and make your pick of what you were looking for here?
Well, I think it's a whole part of wrestling, the entrance. We used to have best theme song or music, and we kind of eliminated that a couple of years ago. But I think as we're seeing production get bigger and better with all these companies, I think for me, when I'm rating a match, I count the entrance as part of it. It's such a huge thing. And I think this year especially, there were so many like different entrances, whether it being, Tony Khan paying money to get Metallica for Sting, or just like that incredible set you had at WrestleMania this year and how you're utilizing that. So yeah, I kind of wanted to maybe chat about some of the best entrances of the year.
Yeah, this is yeah, go for it.
All right, well, mine is going to be very simple. We were all there, and when that first chord of the final countdown came on in the Scotiabank Arena, and you realize the American Dragon is coming out to that theme, a theme we know costs a lot of money to Europe to play. And Tony Khan bought this. Like Braden and I right away, as soon as you heard the boo, we were like, it's happening. It's happening. And then
was this a Jamie Hayter level reaction that you guys had at Full Gear?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And then you heard other people clue in, went da-da-da-da, hit. And then by the time Danielson is like stood on the turnbuckle, arms out, it's the final countdown. Everyone's singing along.
Epic.
And then you just see this big smile on Danielson's face. Like, wow, that was awesome. It was such a simple entrance, but was such a moment of 2023 for me.
It was so good. I can't wait to hear it at Wembley. They definitely are going to get it for his Wembley entrance. But yeah, that was pretty epic.
All right, let's go to Wei with best entrance.
I went with WrestleMania this past year, I should say, and Rey Mysterio's entrance coming out to Nothing But a G Thing with Snoop Dogg inside a lowrider, and then having that switch up to Viva La Raza, just a little bit of a shout out to Eddie Guerrero. And for me, it's something that's on the surface so silly, but I almost got kind of emotional at it because here you have Snoop Dogg, who I don't know if pop culture may sort of associate with the lowrider as much with anybody as maybe him. And then in that situation to just bring out the memory of Eddie Guerrero, so that now we have this weird link between Eddie Guerrero and Snoop Dogg via lowrider from Rey Mysterio. I just thought it was absolutely incredible. And of course, this follows Dominic coming out in the police van as well. I just thought two sets of incredible entrances, but predominantly seeing this image of Ray inside a lowrider with Snoop, I thought was really amazing.
That's a great one as well. I like this category because there were quite a few from this past year. I'm going to go a bit of a different one, and that was at Noah the New Year with Shinsuke Nakamura for his match against the Great Muta. I'm like losing my voice here, but this was Nakamura just turning the calendar back, and all of a sudden it was like all the charisma that I thought had just evaporated out of this individual was back in a second. It was like the Nakamura that walked out at TakeOver back in Dallas in 2016, and he came out and just felt like an ultimate superstar. Here in this white, it looked incredible. They did a huge crowd for this, and in some ways I think like this did set the table for this rejuvenation for Shinsuke Nakamura in 2023 that I think, respectfully, I think all of us had sort of just written off Nakamura as being like, your mid-card act in WWE that has a role but won't be a significant one, but he felt like a superstar. And this guy, it was just this entrance alone really just hit that with me of the star potential that still exists with a Nakamura. Braden, best entrance.
Yeah, I have a few, but I did pick the same as Way. I mean, Rey Mysterio, Snoop Dogg in LA coming out to Eddie Guerrero's theme, Snoop's theme, and Rey Mysterio. It was just like so epic. In fact, I'd add Dominic's into that. So much that I went and got the exact mask from that event. Him coming out with the Halloween Havoc Ray inspired mask with the handcuffs and both entrances were just amazing. Way definitely capped it off. I'd recommend checking out the YouTube video where they're doing a trial run during the day with Snoop and Rey Mysterio, just like kicking it, having fun. It's so good. It's so wholesome. But I basically picked both of those because I just thought that was so epic with the police taking out Dom. And it's just so both entrances so good. But I got a bunch of honorable mentions I'll hit you quickly with. Bad Bunny at Backlash. I see some people in the chat putting that one. Not only, there's a few reasons why. A, they use drones. That was crazy. The view of the arena when he's walking out with the drone is nuts. However, earlier in the day before the Backlash show happened, Bad Bunny actually was tweeting out saying, "Hey WWE, I'm so sorry, but I'm making you buy my other song to use as my entrance theme. I'm not coming out to Booker T, the song he's used before. I'm coming out to this song." And he chose right because the crowd just erupt when he comes out. It's fantastic.
It was one of the best things this year. I mean, it's become such a thing, singing along with themes, whether it be Cult of Personality or Metalingus or Kingdom or whatever.
I'm sorry, the name of that song is just
But I think, doing these events in underserved cities, or going to Puerto Rico and just having everyone sing that Bad Bunny
Shambea,
song.
Yeah.
Everyone's singing along in Wembley to MJF's theme as he's coming.
Yeah,
and
that was another one. Yeah, more honorable mentions from All In. Obviously, you said Sting using Metallica. That was pretty epic. That was just so epic. We had MJF coming out on his throne. I mean, I gotta say, Jericho, he didn't sound too great singing, but still, he sang himself out to
Fozzy
the crowd.
played Wembley Stadium.
Yeah, Fozzy played Wembley. You gotta, I guess give him his flowers there. That was pretty epic as well. But then last one here is not necessarily any specific one, but just looking at hey, who's new that has a cool entrance is the Metaphor on NXT.
Oh yeah,
the way they come out is the Powerpuff Girls lights shooting up from the ground or whatever. Oh man, it's pretty cool. So entrances definitely took a step up. Oh, and Roman Reigns at WrestleMania.
Roman's 6-piece piano, grand piano, concerto, whatever,
Sick.
Was pretty good. And his theme's awesome anyway, just the grandeur of it all.
Epic entrances this year for sure.
I'd throw into the back-to-back nights of Sammy in Montreal as well, just in terms of nothing, no pomp and circumstance, just sheer love for this individual in that arena both nights. I would argue the SmackDown one was just as loud when he came out. The whole crowd was there just for him to come out and drop a few words before the promo. It was very cool to be there for that weekend. Next is Most Improved. And as we go to last year, we had Wade, Davie, and Braden picked the Acclaimed. I went with Chris Jericho for Most Improved, which
last year
that he had in 2022. Look at his list of matches that he had. I remember my justification for that. I will kick this one off because I'm going a bit more unconventional for this one. Rather than an individual, I am going with CMLL as a whole, because a few years ago, they were my worst promotion of the year and had fallen off a cliff. This year, they have done unbelievable business. There have been numerous Friday nights at Arena Mexico, drawing over 10,000 people. Their 90th anniversarial card was highlighted with Volador Jr. beating Angel de Horo in a hair versus hair match. You had Templario over Dragon Rojo Jr. in a mask versus mask match. Other highlights of the year, I mentioned the Rocky Romero, year-long holding of the historic welterweight title and then losing it to Moscar Dorada 2.0, who is the rebranded Panterita Jr., who is only 22 years old and is going to be just a phenomenal star for years to come. You had Andrade come in for several shots towards the end of the year, including a match with Volador Jr., Rocky Romero losing his hair. I mean, they had a whole lot going for them, incredible crowds, and it's a company that we don't focus enough on, but they had honestly in a year where if you're just looking at growth, CMLL had as much as anyone this year in terms of where they were a year and a half ago to now. So just wanted to put a spotlight on them. But let's go next to Way with Most Improved in 2023.
I went with my pick being Mr. L.A. Knight for this year. I think there are several people that you could pick for this particular category. I went with L.A. Knight simply because looking at the calendar year of where he was versus where he is today, it really has been pretty unprecedented. 2023 to me was the year that this company finally took notice of his appeal with this crowd, and he went from last year being the manager of a male model group to this year at least being given the role of jobbing to Bray Wyatt in the Mountain Dew match, which he did a very amicable job of being a participant in, and then he ends it by headlining a title match with Roman Reigns, and now he's about to at least be in a title match at the Royal Rumble. So it's not just the fact that he's been pushed, but I think he's very much risen to the occasion. His promos continue to deliver. He's managed to continue to maintain this level of appeal to the crowd despite losing to Roman Reigns in that title challenge. And I would also say his in-ring is now at least at a capable level where he can have a compelling main event match in the ring with somebody who's in the top mix at a pretty sort of regular basis. So I think he's really, really improved his stock from the beginning of this year to the end of this year.
We're going to go to Braden and then Davie because I got to run out for 30 seconds and we'll be right back. But Braden, most improved.
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback off you, Wei, like the whole thing is insane. I mean, wrestling fans, every year there's a new fad and chant that seems to like get themselves over. But attending SummerSlam in the Big D, that was in a seas of yes for 2 days straight of just people screaming it. The fact that my girlfriend hates the yeah chant from LA Knight because I got her roommates to do it and their friends to do it. They don't even know who LA Knight is, but they walk around going, yeah. So like it's just a guy saying yeah. And somehow it's propelled him into like superstardom. But then now that he's got there, he's been cutting these promos. So like I didn't even think of him in most improved, but like, honestly, you're totally on the ball. I'm going with someone from NXT. I'm going with my boy, Big Trick Williams. You knew I was going with that way, didn't you? You had that image ready for me.
Yeah, I did have a strong feeling. The chat room agrees with you. John Cena, T. Anthony, Matty B, Trick Williams is their pick.
So like first impressions of this guy, like over a year ago, I was like, who is this guy? He's fumbling all over the place. He can't even wrestle. Fast forward, I eat all my words because this guy is just risen to the occasion. He's one of the best talkers on the mic in the WWE. He's gotten over so many different little things. Booker T doing his entrance, the ad-libs is just something to like, it's just so entertaining. And then watching him win that Iron Survivor Challenge and like seeing how crazy the crowd are behind him. Like, yeah, he's just someone that's like really stepped up. And I can't wait to kind of see where Trick and Mello really go in WWE and main roster. But like Trick is stepped up wrestling wise. Like I'd say he's still got a little bit to go, but as far as like persona and in like cutting promos and being a character, he's like become the A character on NXT. So can't wait to see where his 2024 goes. So whoop that Trick.
I went for this Canadian kid called Chris Jericho. No, I was also Trick Williams. Like I remember that first episode of NXT 2.0 and heard all the rumors of the rebrand and it all being taken over and Mello had already been a tournament and stuff. And came out and we were like, who the fuck is this guy? And he was stumbling over his words and we're like, oh, this is awful. And we were like, why are you weighing down Mello with this guy? And he's great. Like he's fantastic now. His match he had with Ilya, I think was a real kind of coming out moment for him. And then the Iron Survivor, I thought like, I love that match as a gimmick. I think it's so different and just so much fun. And I was disappointed we didn't get Trick and Ilya at New Year's Eve, or whatever reason it was for that not happening. But yeah, am I okay? Am I breaking up again?
Yeah, you're okay.
You were a little bit there, but we're good now. You recovered.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really excited to see where Trick goes next because I could see him taking that title off of Ilya for the whole Mello feud. But
I like it.
And he's just so smooth on the mic now. as well.
When he finally got over "I'm Trick James, bitch," I was like, it's done. He's gonna be a big star. So yeah, love him.
Our next category, biggest.
Sorry, just an honorable mention from the
Sure.
chat room. A number of you also pointing out Julia Hart as a pick for this category as well.
I'd say Tiffany Stratton as well.
Yeah,
this year too.
Biggest setback. This can be however you want to define it. Someone who their year they went backwards, not forwards, for whatever reasons. Last year, Way and Braden chose CM Punk. Davey had Sammy Guevara, and I went with Ronda Rousey for our biggest setbacks of 2022. Braden, who had the biggest setback this past year?
I don't know. Technically, I guess I'm picking AEW for CM Punk, but really it's AEW and CM Punk. If last year was Brawl Out, this year was Brawl In. Take it how you want, but I'd say the issues, the dramas, whatever NDAs were signed, whatever is going on, whatever went on with CM Punk and AEW was a real big setback for AEW. I think Punk is doing okay. He's selling a lot of t-shirts and hoodies over there in WWE, but it's AEW who definitely took the fall, specifically Tony Khan, who pretty brave to go out into Chicago to basically say, hey, I fired your homeboy and I was scared for my life. And like, obviously people laughed at him this year for that, but at the same time, you can feel for him and AEW. So I look at it from both sides. Like it's just seemed a whole messy. And I think AEW is taking the brunt of this and feeling the effects of this whole thing this year. At least that's the reason why people are jumping on. And I do think ever since him being fired from AEW, I think that has caused some of the negativity from a lot of people and fans to kind of walk with Punk over back to the WWE, maybe possibly. But I'd say that was a big setback for AEW, and it's just kind of unfortunate, whichever way you look at it.
Davey, who had the biggest setback, and was it the person whose jersey you're representing?
Oh man, no, we'll talk about him later.
Yeah. Here comes the money.
The best in the world. Mine's pretty much the same as Braden. I put AEW Collision to be specific, but in general, it's AEW as a whole with the whole CM Punk thing. Like you got this new show by the looks of it to try and keep Punk on board, and all the things with, well, he can't work with certain people, so let's put him on Saturdays. And then, like a couple of weeks before it's about to debut, like he was putting out Instagram messages and was not going to be on the show, and then is on the show for a few weeks, and then it all falls apart again. So I think I'm excited for AEW's 2024. I think Dynamite this week definitely felt like a bit of a reset in a positive way, but I think there's just been this big CM Punk cloud over it for the last
year,
15 months or whatever it is since it all started. So
Way, biggest setback.
I want to give honorable mention here to the Street Profits, who went through a bit of a metamorphosis over the past year. They were certainly due for a change, because I think after winning the tag team championships, where else does a tag team go in the WWE but maybe turn? So the heel turn was due, but it's been so badly botched here with Bobby Lashley. So much so that it seems like now they're just right back to being baby faces, except without any of the appeal that they had prior to joining Bobby Lashley. So they're certainly not as over as before. But my biggest setback of 2023 goes to Austin Theory. This was somebody who last year, or 2022, cashed in his Money in the Bank for a U.S. title run, which was arguably a good course correction for somebody who should have never been in that Money in the Bank spot in the first place. But what does it say when even the U.S. title run was disappointing and forgettable, save for a verbal lashing from John Cena? His in-ring has been pretty unremarkable. His promos have been very generic, and he's somebody who, he doesn't fumble his words. You can give him credit for remembering all of his lines, but he has not found the voice to make those lines feel like they belong to him. And this is somebody who's had more opportunity than most. He ended 2023 by being essentially the second fiddle to Grayson Waller in his own tag team. And this is somebody who at one point was McMahon's handpicked next guy. So it's hard for me to think of a wrestler with a bigger drop in stock, at least on in one of the mainstream promotions.
The only compelling part of Austin Theory this past year was that I was hoping there would be a segment, whether it would have been that Super Tuesday of NXT or just some random Raw where he gets tombstoned, because I could have used the show title Theory of a Dead Man. And that was literally all I was clamoring for with Austin Theory this past year. I have a few that could have been considered biggest setbacks. I mean, some of which include Bandito, who this year, first he had a visa renewal that held him back after he was like coming into AEW. Now he's got this wrist injury that's just set him back. Johnny Gargano, who Braden, Davie, and I were there when he showed up in Toronto and felt like a superstar, and whatever the opposite of superstar is, that's what he was this past year. Scorpio Sky, if you might not be familiar with Scorpio Sky, because he only wrestled 6 matches this year, 3 of which were in ROH. I don't know what's going on with him, but it just seems like just a distant memory. But the person that I went with as having the biggest setback is someone who was red hot a year ago. And that was Jamie Hayter, who got hurt at a terrible time. She's been out for months, missed All In England. I think she will come back and be back on track, but you can't categorize, like, she was just riding so much momentum that this women's division so sorely needs. And I think she best represented it. So, I mean, if you look into 2024, hopefully she has a major role in the women's division, because it just seemed to all be clicking for her. And I remember at Full Gear being at the press conference after and just came away like really impressed with this individual and her personality that was coming through. It just seemed, watching these two react to her music at Full Gear, it just seemed like everything was in place for her. So hopefully that momentum can be restored, because as we've seen with some people, sometimes it's lost and it's hard to get back on track when that happens.
A few honorable mentions here from the chat room. We have Ryan G saying Keith Lee here. We've got Hansi agreeing AEW as a whole. Black Mega Man says Jungle Boy. Jake says the Young Bucks in the tag division. And then we've also got here Kota Ibushi. Jake suggesting might be a contender. Although maybe that might even be a conversation for this year. So yeah, we'll see.
Next category is best on the mic. Last year, I chose Jon Moxley. The 3 of you went with MJF. So let's start off with Way, best on the mic.
I went with Cody Rhodes for best on the mic. I think you can make an argument that AEW has, like, in general, the better promos consistently. But they're very different. I've come to realize, from I think what I consider to be the best of like WWE style of promos. And I think there's validity to both styles. I think AEW promos, I think of them a lot more as like, like maybe more akin to punk rock. They might feel a bit more authentic, but they might be a little bit looser around the edges, especially with TV formatting, people occasionally maybe stepping over each other, but that's what real feels like, right? Whereas I think of Cody as his WWE promos to me are more like very good piano recitals. They're incredibly well rehearsed and crafted, and every note seems specifically engineered to elicit some form of reaction or to convey some form of meaning. Again, they're both great, but in this instance for 2023, I feel Cody was able to be year-round somebody who was the lead voice of a promotion, and under those sort of restrictions, I feel like that's that much more impressive. A lot of guys can cut great promos without shackles, but I think few could flourish under this system like Cody, where every word is scrutinized. You have to hit all your storyline beats, you have to hit your time cues, and every single week, no matter the length of promo, this man delivers something memorable. And you can argue this is a better system where he's been able to flourish in ways that he wasn't under the freedom of AEW. So he, to me, was my pick this year.
My pick this year was Eddie Kingston, who I think continues to set himself apart from anyone else, where I think you can take even a cold match and you give him a minute, he will give you a reason to care about it, whether it is putting relevance and importance into every Continental Classic match that he was involved in. I think he added so much by his presence with the titles, but more importantly was just him, the significance of winning this, that this tournament, I think the success was largely like, we looked at this as like Bryan Danielson's tournament when it was constructed. It really turned into Eddie Kingston's tournament and chasing this Continental crown that was something that he dreamed of as well. But when you go back to the lead up to him and Claudio Castagnoli and having their match earlier this year and the sit down they did, I mean, so many of the different promos that Eddie Kingston was involved in, he taps into an emotion that few can, which there were some great candidates this year, but he was my pick for best on the mic. Davey, how about you?
I think mic skills have definitely improved a lot across the board. I think AEW's always kind of been known for their like promos with likes of Eddie and MJF, etc. But I think the WWE has got better in the last year. It's felt a lot less scripted, like as Way kind of very eloquently put it about Cody. But I'd put Drew in that list as well, who at one point was reciting history stories,
Scottish
or whatever,
folklore,
and now just has a really kind of deep character, and I kind of believe everything he says. But I'm going to go a bit left field with this, and I'm going to go with Samantha Irvin, who I think has just been absolutely fantastic this last year. I think there was such a time where a lot of the WWE announcing was very kind of robotic and they weren't allowed to have much character. Whereas I think she brings so much character and life to all these different people. She does a different announce styles for whoever's coming out. And I just think it's just boosted WWE, especially these big live pay-per-views, as we mentioned earlier, in all these different settings, just bring some gravitas and big fight feel and all that. So I think she's been great this year.
If you read Justin Roberts' book, like, he was actively told in WWE not to do anything that would make him stand out. Like, they wanted the opposite of that. Which, I mean, that does tell you, like, the philosophical changes, that you can have someone that has, that has character to her, even in a role such as the ring announcer, that adds so much to the show that she has now become a part of, that people look forward to. Braden.
This year I had a few different ones, but I'm going to go with MJF on this one. I feel like I like the whole I'm your scumbag. It was okay that he turned babyface this year, but I'm thinking back to his feud with Danielson when he's bringing up the family and stuff, when he was a really good heel. But I also enjoyed a lot of the stuff MJF did with Adam Cole when they were still somewhat feuding months back. So I'd say for the better first half of the year, MJF was still delivering as one of the best promos in wrestling. And there were a few others this year that stood out. You guys were kind of right. Even in WWE, there were some like way better promos this year. It felt a little less like handcuffed, but I'd still go with Max. I think he's one of the best talkers in wrestling. And he every time he goes out and cuts a segment, people just listen. Like, he could probably read a phone book and people would still like get into what he's saying. So he's great.
Several people in the chat room are giving their picks, and John Cino saying Eddie Kingston. We have Matty B also saying Eddie Kingston, and we have Brian saying Christian Cage. A number of people are actually choosing Gunther, including Ryan G, and it also seems like Hansi is also choosing Gunther. So hey, that is very valid as well. So. And
Danielson, like, I love a lot of these Eddie Kingston, Danielson during that Continental Classic. They were airing on social media these promos.
Yeah, they were great.
They should air more of those on TV. Your Moxley
or
promos.
When they've been on commentary during others' matches, kind of semi-cutting promos in that form as well.
Yeah.
Now on the other side of the coin, the worst on the mic in 2022. Davey, you chose Saraya. Way, you picked Ronda Rousey. Myself and Braden, we went with Zion Quinn. So this year,
oh yeah, Zion Quinn.
Who was the worst on the mic? I'm going to start this one off. I'll preface this by stating there are probably like a dozen that I could go for in NXT, that some of them that are cutting their first promos on national television have no business doing so. And sometimes I'm conflicted of how we should grade NXT. In the one sense, it is it is developmental, and these people are being thrown out there on national television. That said, this is a national television show, and you are putting them out there to be judged by as such. So I'm not going with an NXT pick. Instead, I'm going to take a pick from last year, and that was Ronda Rousey, who I think just continually just did not really find the essence of her voice in any way. And it almost felt as though she was in a challenge with herself, with the words that were coming out of her mouth, with some preconceived notion of what a wrestling promo is, and forcing her message into these words that were always contrived, always felt so manufactured and deliberated over for hours before she would get it out. And I just felt like a natural essence of a promo never came into her run in WWE, first run or second run that we saw this last year. So that is my choice. Let's go to Davey next for worst on the mic.
You would boo a mother.
You would already you're begging her.
Yeah, coming in hot right at the end of the year. It's Shayna Wayne.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
Boy.
She's only cut like one promo.
Well, it had an impact on me. What can I say? Terrible. God bless her.
Oh, man. I hope she's most improved next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shayna Wayne.
Set the bar low. The sky's the limit for Shane's.
Well, You Would Boo a Mother was 2024 technically, so she is that's going to go into the bin for next year as well. Braden, worst on the microphone.
Look, John, you really said it well. Like we do Up Next every week. We watch NXT. A lot of the times these people are on these shows is the first time they're on TV. But you're right. Like this is TV. So you're a nice guy and you didn't want to necessarily throw any newcomers under the bus. However, I'm not as nice, and I have a few
Hong Kong, the bus is pulling up.
Like there is some people on NXT that week by week I'm like, man, like you go to the gym, you go to the PC, you learn how to do a drop kick, but can you take an acting class? Can you read out loud in front of a mirror once or twice? Or maybe
some of those locker room scenes are
they're so bad. Like you don't know the torture. You can watch 3-hour Raws, guys, but we have to deal with NXT Degrassi High every week with Gigi Dolan and Cora Jade nonsense talking all the time. It's like I'm just signaling those two out. But like there is so many of these like NXT up and coming people that like it is their first time on TV. They don't know what they're doing. And sometimes it can be awful. And I hate to just pinpoint one person, but I'm sorry. I have to do it. Young Rock, the Pebble, Ava Rain, the Rock's daughter. She should be electrifying and charismatic. And instead she was in a cult with Joe Gacy in the schism, just cutting rambling things on. And then to make things worse or better, she's now become the GM or assistant to the GM of Shawn Michaels in NXT, and still just
no title. She just hangs out with Shawn Michaels, and
they've only explained it this week.
Yeah.
They've only just been like, oh, what's going on with you? Why are you doing this?
Like, I get John's point, and we're kind of the same when it comes to worst match. It's like we are watching developmental, but she's been there long enough now, and she is she is the daughter of one of the highest paid actors in the world. You think she'd like improve?
So
and have action lessons.
I really want her to turn it around. And I've been like in her court. She has not really wrestled. I think technically like one match on TV and didn't do much in it, and has been the talking point of the schism, which was just a complete failure. Shout out GYV who got the hell out of there and now are free agents. Can't wait to see their 2024. But Ava has just been like a mouthpiece, and now a mouthpiece for Shawn Michaels, and it's just super bizarre. And I hope that maybe she does improve. But right now, this past year, she was someone that every time she talked on TV, it just didn't sound good or believable. Just she was reading line by line. And again, she's the daughter of The Rock. So it's like, I feel bad, but like you'd figure she'd be like really exciting and eyebrow raising. But unfortunately, she's not. So sorry, Ava Rain.
Just because we won't have another chance to bring this up, 2 years ago, you, myself, Braden, and Davey, we all chose Von Wagner. And I just want to say this past year, what they did with his character this year, I thought was incredible. Like
the year of Von.
Dude, I thought like him with Robert Stone this year, like, yes, it got very campy doing the dinner at home.
The kids with the ponytails.
But dude, like the story about like his head, like being mocked as a child. I mean, they did some like great character work with this guy this past year. And I do think that is where NXT has excelled in some of these character stories, which is why I'm much more optimistic on this Ridge Holland story than others have been. That I feel they have, like, yes, they have some odd misses as well, with some as well, maybe people that can see into the future. But I really think like what they did with Von Wagner, this was a guy that I thought was going to be cut, and instead I think they have turned him around to be someone that like the audiences cares about. I don't know if this guy will ever make it beyond NXT, but I do feel like they tapped into a real story with him and told it in a way that was a life raft for this character that I thought was floundering.
I don't think he's necessarily improved kind of speaking wise, but his character
it's
just
the character
he's
yes.
so endearing, and like
Totally.
it
Yes.
doesn't matter. He doesn't need to be an MJF with his dialogue. He's just this big gentle giant who you really want to root for. And it's completely worked this year.
I can't believe it.
Pollock's a figure now that people at least care about now. Yeah, it's a perfect way to put it.
Shout out Von Wagner, who got a reference on the Best of show.
Best character.
I went with.
Oh, sorry, Way.
It's okay, John. So I know that this person is not a wrestler, but in my opinion, if you're somebody who is on screen on any sort of regular basis, you're going to qualify for these categories. So I went with my worst on the mic of 2023, Tony Khan. He to me is by far the most awkward public speaker who regularly appears on television in pro wrestling. I think he's perfectly fine when he's speaking as himself at press conferences, despite maybe, how I think robotic or at least like predictable some of his answers are these days. I think he comes across more than okay, but it's when he's tasked to appear on camera to convey any of his several announcements this year, he still very much comes across like a deer in the headlights. And they've tried different things like pairing him with various interviewers to help it, but it's still really not working in my opinion. He's the right person to deliver the announcements, but I just really wish that in this year he'll be able to maybe figure out something that's able to make him sound a bit more natural.
All right, what an array of choices we had for worst on the mic in 2023.
I love Tony Khan screaming when he's 9 days. What was when he introduced the athlete?
That guy who's
he's like he's screaming. Oh man, I agree with Wade. Yeah.
Next category is best character. Last year, all of us went with Sami Zayn, the honorary Uso. So let us start off with Wade this time for best character.
Yeah, maybe if you've listened to any of my reviews over the past maybe half year, this might come as no surprise. My favorite character currently in professional wrestling is Drew McIntyre. Whatever you want to call this version of Drew McIntyre, the sort of truther Drew McIntyre, the person who feels like he was so wrong that he will stop at nothing to take his frustrations out on people like Jey Uso or people who like Jey Uso. And to me, it's been one of the most sort of most nuanced and well-handled heel turns that I've ever seen in professional wrestling. And it's something I certainly didn't expect out of a WWE character. He, to me, is somebody who's so incredibly well-rounded. And every time he goes out there to talk about whatever justification he has for the action that he's doing, he has at least like half of me saying, yeah, you're actually right, Drew. But ultimately, it's one of the most organic heel turns that I think we've been able to see. And he's just done such a great job with it.
And coincides with like reportedly a contract that's coming due in just a couple of months and is doing the best work of his career character wise. So, I mean, not a bad time to be in such a prominent role. Let's go next to Davey with best character.
I went for Swerve Strickland. I think he's had an incredible year and just he's someone we've been watching for a long time from his NXT run. And we've always been a fan of his work, but this is the year he really elevated himself to being a main eventer. I completely see him becoming world champion in the next year. The whole act with Prince Nana, just it kind of shouldn't work, but it does. Like having Nana doing all the silly dance makes him even more terrifying when he's just walking right past him, looking all sinister. And like as ridiculous as that home invasion angle was, I thought he was still very captivating in it. And I just think he's had such a run this year.
I'd add he has some of the best gear. He always looks like a super villain when he's coming out with his like fur coat on and stuff. But I think it was the Texas Death Match. He wore the Bray Wyatt / Terry Funk inspired gear as well, which was really clean. So, yeah.
So, yeah, big fan of Swerve.
My honorable mention was Shinsuke Nakamura, who I love what they've done with this heel character, with the incorporation of like the animations that we just saw recently with the Cody Rhodes thing. I enjoyed American Nightmare Before Christmas. Some opinions may vary, but I just think he's such a compelling figure that I knew was in there, but I just thought they had so extinguished any life in this character. And to me, he has been one of the real shining lights of this past year of creative, that they have taken somebody that I think most had written off as just another like cast off on the show and turned into someone that they felt enough that they could build up to a program with Seth Rollins. And they had a great match on pay-per-view. And since he has come out of that title program, they've still kept him in like a semi-serious like heel role now, feuding with Cody. But my best character of the year was Christian Cage, the Patriarch, and just his work all year long. He was phenomenal. I just think he has added so much. I think that they will get there with Nick Wayne. I think his attachment is going to do wonders for him. And we probably are in store for like a several month program as well with Kill Switch involved here too. So, you could argue this guy, at least, speaking wise, I think this is the best work he has done in his career, and it's at 50. And yet, the work, look at like him and Adam Copeland, who just tore it up at World's End at the end of the year. So I would like, certainly there is that kind of balance of like how far you go with somebody that's, up there in age. But I mean, the work has spoken for itself, that this guy, there's points this past year where I think he reached like top heel status in AEW, and some people might place him there today. So there you go. The guy that I would say has more heat right now than the Devil. So Christian Cage, best character.
I agree with you, John. I'm jumping in. He's my best character of 2023 as well. The Patriarch. Before he even got the name, it was really, he was my favorite talker this year. I know I picked MJF, but like you were getting nervous when this guy was cutting promos. With when he had the promo off with Ric Flair, we were like, okay, what's he gonna say? When he had the promo battle, when he met Nick Wayne in the ring, it was like, oh my god. When the Von Erichs were visiting, I was sweating as well. But like the whole go fuck yourself was just like the funniest thing this year. This guy was telling everyone their dads were dead and all this and that. He was just so
I also think he's evolved past just the shock stuff. Like that stuff works for a period to shock people. Now it's just great. Like people hate this character, and he doesn't even have to go for the shock value of stuff. Like I know he's brought up like Adam Copeland's mother and stuff, but it's like, it's not the crux of the promo. It's like, this is an asshole, but it's like there's far more to it now than just coming out and having the zingers in store. So yeah, I think he's actually evolved from when he started this run.
I mean, this guy has gone from like like being a terrible human to this like 18-year-old kid to now becoming his stepfather, and now like really becoming his stepfather with like Nick Wayne's mom. It's just like keeps evolving. And you said it, like I've loved Christian his whole career, but for some reason this year he just really stood out as one of the big heels in AEW. This year he was the heel. MJF became our scumbag and like somewhat of a babyface, whereas this guy you just love to hate, and he does his job perfectly. I love to hate Christian Cage. So the Patriarch, best character.
Now we go to worst character, where last year Way selected Lacey Evans, and myself, Davey, and Braden all went with Scripps.
Oh my god, he's still on TV, by the way, except now he's in a gang.
But he's without the mud, and we will see if he is out of the running for worst character. Let's start off with Braden with the worst character of 2023.
Oh man. Okay. Where do I even go with this? Okay, I'll just go with it. I'm going to go with QTV. If you remember what QTV is, QT Marshall and co were doing a TMZ character, and I'm completely fine with that. You're like, see mid-level card type things, but then they tried to rehab Will Hobbs, and that's where I got a little upset. You chose to get this huge guy who's finally going to break through from being in different groups, and you put him in QTV. So all those segments with them like laughing, doing the TMZ ripoff like promos and everything backstage. Yeah, like Mike. Oh my god, like it's QT doing the like he's got what the Stanley Cup drinking thing there, whatever the mugs and stuff. Like it was just so abysmal. It was so bad. And then they brought in Johnny Dynamite. If that's oh man. So CHCH is better than QTV. Never forget. That was a sign there. Thank you, Wei, for finding that. But yeah, QTV was awful. And in hindsight, like I think it's something I might rewatch in years to come, being like, oh yeah, remember that was a thing. So AEW fans, pour one out for QT Marshall, because he might be showing up on another show, maybe possibly. But yeah, that was a pretty bad character this year. I have lots of honorable mentions, but I'll wait to see what you guys get off your chest.
Well, I'm going to second QTV. I am not going to second your notion that I will ever be sitting down to rewatch these god-awful segments that were terrible. There was never one that I found to be interesting. It seemed to be, we want to be cute and inside, and it was so lame. Even right down to like the set. I mean, I understand it's supposed to look cheap, but I thought like these segments were something that like, if I was AEW, I wouldn't want these on my television. It made AEW feel so uncool that these were even there. They were never funny. They were such cheap attempts to think like we're so clever and cute. No one got over from these. You could honestly take these individual parts and they probably would have, like, I think Harley Cameron can have a role in AEW. I thought QT on his own, you could find some role for him. Johnny TV, but together it brought everybody down that much further. Hobbs unfortunately got saddled with this thing too, that he was involved in this. They were poorly written, poorly executed, and I always dreaded when that graphic came up. So that was my pick, with an honorable mention to Tyrus. But let's go to Davey.
I went for the Young Bucks. Big fan of the Young Bucks. I think they're like top tier talents in ring, but what was this year they had? I thought they seemed completely unmotivated. I didn't get their kind of characters' motivations at all year. You had a hot match coming up with FTR, a rematch everyone was looking forward to, but it seemed cold going into it. They had that sit-down interview, didn't really seem to want to be there. Obviously, I think a lot might have been the big cloud over AEW with CM Punk, but I just didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy the match with Jericho and Omega and the whole freak out after. I feel they're incredibly cold as characters, and the fact that they were dragging kind of Kenny and Hangman into their stuff when they could have been doing some great single stuff as well. I just found them really, like, they really put me off this year. And I really hope whatever they come back with is something fresh, because I feel they've just been doing the same stuff now for years and there hasn't been any evolution. And I just felt like I was watching two people that didn't really want to be there, which is disappointing, because they have some of my favorite matches and I love watching the Young Bucks in matches, but there just needs to be some development when they come back. And if the rumored Colt Cabana, Brandon Cutler faction is it, that ain't something I want to see.
And rounding it out is Way with his worst character of the year.
I went with Nikki Cross, and whatever the character is supposed to be. You know, I feel like she's been doing this for like the entire year, where occasionally they'll put her into the background as some form of Easter egg. I believe they're trying to like create something with Candice LeRae and her at some point. That was dropped. She, I guess, is good for like an occasional, I don't know, gag for like a Halloween themed episode. But even then, I think there are far better attempts at doing what she does. It's just, you know, a long time now. And I don't think there's been any evolution or any sort of direction towards where this character should be going beyond just a bit of a one note. Hey, like here's somebody who looks blankly into the camera type of thing. So that was my pick.
I have a few honorable mentions quickly. For worst character, Joe Gacy. He went from feuding with he had Druids and stuff a year ago, but then this year he had a cult with The Rock's daughter and GYV. That was really bizarre. And then he kind of joked that he was going to commit suicide on an episode of NXT, jumping off the roof, kind of. That was something that happened. So yeah, he dressed up like Jeffrey Dahmer. He's been drinking coffee on, I don't know what the hell,
hiding under the ring.
Yeah, it's just been like super bizarre. Another one on NXT is Nathan Frazier's Home Harding Truths hit thing. He thinks he's John Oliver. He thinks he's got a talk show. Not as bad as QTV, but it's pretty bad. And then also worst character, the Devil. I was not fine with it, but it was whatever. But as soon as the Devil and Co got like matching track jackets with the Devil logo all over it, like the Joker's like buddies or goons, I was totally over that. So yeah, there was a bunch of bad characters, but all of those come to mind.
Next up is Best Weekly TV Show. Last year, actually the last 2 years, it's been a clean sweep of AEW Dynamite. Will the streak be interrupted? Davie Portman.
I think this is an interesting year because I don't think AEW's had the smoothest year. And I do think shows like NXT have really stepped up and has been quite enjoyable this year. But I would still go with AEW Dynamite. I think the matches they produce on a weekly basis are really unmatched by any other TV show. And despite like some, storytelling elements that I haven't maybe been so fond of, and certain decisions like, heating up a guy like a Takeshita or a Daniel Garcia for them to disappear for months. There's certainly stuff I don't like about AEW in this last year, but Dynamite for me still is the clear winner of Best TV Show.
How about you, Wei?
I too went with AEW Dynamite. Yes, we will have a lot of complaints about AEW this year in booking, but I think as a 2-hour viewing product, I still get really excited whenever it's Wednesday and it's 8 p.m. And because I know that the standard of wrestling that I'll be able to see, and just overall the standard of even just in-ring promos and just as a TV show, I know I'm going to be in for something of a very high quality. And as long as WWE Raw, even though it's gotten better, as long as it stays 3 hours at the pace that it continues to be, I just don't see that ever changing for first run programming, at least.
Yeah, I would certainly say I think people are a lot higher on Raw and NXT this year, but I still feel you're coming from a place where there's still a lot of ground to make up when we're just assessing these in terms of show quality. I'm actually going to go away from Dynamite, and it might not be the popular pick among many, but I am going to go with Collision because I think that as much drama that was surrounding Collision, I think in the post CM Punk period, number one, I personally like the pacing of Collision a lot more. I think that some of just the match building that they do, typically the main event gets a lot more breathing room. And from the period that Punk left, this became the Bryan Danielson show. And quietly, you had that Texas death match with Ricky Starks, a number one contenders match with Danielson and Swerve, a 25-minute match with Danielson and Christian. Then we get into the Continental Classic, where I do feel like the big attraction was Danielson's weekly match that you were getting specific on Collision each week as well. And I thought this was, from his matches with Eddie Kingston, Andrade, and then with Daniel Garcia as well, were just some of the matches that he had on Collision. So I think that it's the combination with Dynamite that makes Collision tougher for people to catch up and be watching every week. I think Saturday is not all right for fighting. It is not the night for more pro wrestling. So I think that has been the toughest part of it. But I typically come away with this show where I'm pretty happy with these 2 hours and wish there weren't so many other hours to keep up with. But let us go on over to Braden.
Yeah, I love AEW Dynamite. It's even on a bad episode, I'm like, oh, that was, whatever. I'm agreeing with Wei. It's like every Wednesday, I'm like, even if I'm working or I have to watch it later or the next day, it's like that's the show I have not missed in a week. I always tend to check it out. And yeah, there's stuff we can nitpick that we don't like, especially this year. And they've had a pretty tough year, but at the end of the year, it's been my highlight. I don't always watch Collision, I definitely cherry pick a lot of the stuff on that show, but Dynamite, I tend to watch all the way through every week. And there's such good wrestling on it. I feel like it's still the show that's made for me, like a early 30s guy who used to love wrestling, that it's still reignited my fandom for it. And I know WWE's really picking up steam and had a fantastic year and going into it, but I can't sit through a 3-hour Raw. I've tried watching Raw and SmackDown this year a lot more, and I still can't really sink my teeth into it the way I used to as a kid. So Dynamite still has my full attention, and the wrestling always hits. So best show this year for me.
And Way.
I think I went, didn't I?
Oh, did you go? Sorry,
yeah,
folks. We're
it's
late
okay. We can go to the chat room where Jake agrees that he actually enjoys Collision more than Dynamite. Bruce Lord says, agreed, Collision. No BS, great matches, less backstage silliness. John Cena says, honorable mention to Impact Wrestling. And that's about it.
Okay. Well, we're going to continue on the best with best pay-per-view / premium live event. And we will start things off with Way. What was the best pay-per-view or PLE this past year?
I went with AEW New Japan Pro Wrestling Forbidden Door 2, which was the event that took place in our city, and we had the fortune to attend live, and maybe that did kind of skew some of my sort of decision making. But this had arguably the match of the year on it with Will Ospreay versus Kenny Omega. It had an incredibly anticipated match in the main event with Kazuchika Okada and Bryan Danielson, of course. And I just think up and down the card, every match offered some sort of a specialness to it, whether it be MJF versus Tanahashi or even like a weird match like a CM Punk versus Satoshi Kojima. I think it heightened both rosters, and made a New Japan roster feel special, and made an AEW roster feel very unique, I guess, in the showcase as well. So that was my pick.
Braden, best pay-per-view.
Yeah, again, selfishly this year, we went to a lot of wrestling. The four of us did our Forbidden Pour event. Shout out that, and anyone who attended, that was the real event of the year for sure. And the wrestling karaoke with luchador masks. But Forbidden Door, I as soon as it ended, everyone we were with, all of our friends meeting up afterwards, were just like, that was the best wrestling event I've ever attended. It's over. Stop. Find something new to watch. I'll pick up NASCAR or F1 or whatever. It's like that. It's done. It's capped out. It's over. It was so good. So I do pick Forbidden Door 2 in Toronto. It just had everything I needed in wrestling. It had New Japan talent being shown in the ACC, in the Scotiabank Arena, like Okada coming out in the Scotiabank Arena just was like blowing my mind, only for Danielson to have the final countdown. It was just like, man, everything. Kenny Omega, my favorite wrestler, taking on Ospreay. Like, it just had Kojima elbowing Punk in the dick. It had everything going for it. So I really love this pay-per-view. Honestly, an honorable mention. If it's not Forbidden Door, it had to be All In. Again, selfishly being there, the live atmosphere was just like unmatched. It felt like WrestleMania. It felt like, wow, AEW has done this. I do think they still had a pretty fantastic year, and they really did put on some great events. But man, Forbidden Door, like rewatching specifically the one match from that show, but everything on that show was just so special. And I think they really knocked it out the park with that one.
Are you going 3 for 3, Davey, on Forbidden Door?
I am not, and it actually wasn't my favorite AEW show either. I'd rate Revolution maybe a tad above that, which had that incredible Texas Death Match with Hangman Page and Jon Moxley, and the MJF Bryan Danielson Iron Man match. But I am going to the WWE, and I am going to night 1 of WrestleMania. Started off with a bit of a rocky start with Austin Theory and John Cena, but after that, it really picked up. I thought that Fatal 4-Way tag match was way better than it had any right of being. It was so much fun. You then had Seth Rollins, Logan Paul, who had a hell of a match. And then going forward to that, Rey Mysterio, Dominic Mysterio, which might have been the loudest the bar was when we were hosting our event. We mentioned about the entrances earlier, but the whole match was so much fun. Rey spanking Dom with the belt and all that. And then you had Rhea v. Charlotte in an incredible SmackDown Women's title match. And then the triumphant return of Shane McMahon, followed by Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus the Usos. So I thought it was a hell of a night. I really enjoyed night 2 as well. And if you could put the two together, I'd probably say the 2, but night 1 kind of topped it for me.
I just looking this week, putting this category together and going through the AEW pay-per-views, like whatever you want to say, like their pay-per-views were incredible this year. Like the most negativity was attached with World's End, that even if you want to look at that as like their weakest pay-per-view, you still got those final 3 matches on that show with Copeland and Christian and Moxley and Kingston, and then MJF and Joe. But like I had a hard time like just picking between some of these shows. I thought Revolution, which Davey brought up, was like a phenomenal show with the 60-minute match and the Texas Death Match, which might not have even been the best Texas Death Match that Hangman had all year. You can debate that. I thought All Out that was a very maligned show coming so quickly after All In, but the show itself just like was incredible with Orange Cassidy and Moxley, Danielson and Starks in that strap match. You had Takeshita beating Kenny Omega. But my pick was Wrestle Dream with Christian Cage and Darby in the main event, and then Adam Copeland showing up. Bryan Danielson and Zack Sabre Jr. finally getting to have their singles match. The Callis family against the Golden Lovers and Jericho. Plus you had the first Hangman Page and Swerve Strickland match as well. That not going to be as remembered as the Texas Death Match, but it was a really great match as well. So I thought that AEW really hit it out of the park with their match quality on pay-per-views this year. And also the fact that they added pay-per-views this year, and like the early returns, like at least for World's End and such, it seems like as though like they are not diminishing their audiences either. So that's interesting to watch next year, is what their pay-per-view numbers remain at, and do they get a streaming deal with this whole domestic rights deal that they are going to be negotiating, and how we're going to be consuming AEW pay-per-views after this year on top of it.
What were our picks last year, John?
Oh, for last year, good question. Let us look at last year's picks for best pay-per-view. I picked Forbidden Door, which was the first iteration of it. Braden and Way chose Full Gear, which is where MJF won the title, and Davie Portman, WrestleMania Night 1. So clearly the real main event, it's Night 1 of WrestleMania. So there you have it.
I stand for the Fed.
From there, do we have any picks away from the chat room?
I wouldn't say anything that seemed all too different. Brian says either Forbidden Door or Wrestle Dream for him. And yeah, that not really too many other options here.
Well, maybe we will get some for worst pay-per-view /PLE of the year. Going back a year, we had I went with NWA Hard Times 3. Way chose GCW Spring Break 2, the greatest clusterfuck. Braden went with the Royal Rumble, and Davey, making an exception, going away from a pay-per-view, chose the infamous Rampage from Toronto that he bought tickets for.
Don't get me started.
It was a paid per view.
I paid to go and see it.
A very sore spot with Davey, even all this time later. But let us look now at 2023. Can I get us started on this one?
Absolutely.
Because I'm going to stay kind of with my theme. And we're going to go to a pay-per-view that I think 95% of people mispronounced. And that was NWA Samhain, which took place on October 28th from Cleveland, Ohio. This was headlined by EC3 and Tom Latimer in a no limits match for the NWA World's Heavyweight title. And when Billy Corgan is booking a pay-per-view, there are no limits to the gimmick matches that you can present, because on this 15-match card, it included a Knights of the Round Table tables match. We had a Riddle Box 6-man tag, a Burning Lake Brawl for the National Heavyweight title, which was won and retaining champion Thrillbilly Silas Mason, submission match, a rock and roll tag team match. Now, before you ask, what's a rock and roll tag match? That's where if your partner kicks out, you take a shot. We had a pillar to post match for the NWA Junior Heavyweight title, a loser leaves NWA match, and just for good measure, we're going to have a Devil's Last Dance Ultimate Hardcore War, where the losers of the match were Sal the Pal and Gags the Gimp, who were sent to be forever indentured by Father Jim Mitchell. Yes, Father Jim Mitchell, who on this same show they cut to as he was snorting coke on this particular pay-per-view. That was NWA Samhain, if you happen to miss it for whatever reason, on October the 28th, and was my pick for worst pay-per-view. from the NWA. Way, what was your worst show?
I mean, I really feel like I should have kept up with the NWA this year just so I could have some options for my worst of picks. This
It's
was
John Cena's pick, and I don't even have to ask him. I'm sure that's his pick.
This was like a really tough category for me, along with like worst pay-per-view or worst promotion, because I would say by and large everything I watched this year was a pretty good standard. Like I was kind of entertained, and I found some redeemable value from almost every like pay-per-view from AEW and WWE.
You're so negative.
No, I mean, it honestly, it's tough because I think everything, when you just strictly lay it down to in-ring content, which pay-per-views still pretty much are, everything typically delivers. And if you can maybe point to something being not of the best or maybe slightly below a standard, I suppose you might look at this year's Crown Jewel from 2023. You know, Roman Reigns versus LA Knight, I thought was fine, but like certainly maybe not. It was a passable match, but maybe not one that any of us will be pointing towards as like one of Roman's great defenses. And then beyond that, maybe just a bit of a not much going on, other than the fact that I think, you know, Solo Sikoa beating John Cena was a significant match for him. But yeah, you know, again, it was a bit of a hard choice. I don't think I even really hated it fully, but I suppose if I had to pick one I like the least, it might be that one.
Okay, let's go to Davey. I know there's a lot of hate in your heart for some show out there that you watched.
Not so much this year. No, I'm kind of on the same train as Way here. Like I don't watch NWA. I don't watch stuff that I know I'm not going to enjoy. And I think
did you buy tickets to any show this particular year?
Well, that is actually what I'm going for. I'm going for SummerSlam this year, which by all means I had a great time. Like it was awesome. Went to Detroit, hung out with all our mates, went to the show. I just think it kind of underdelivered, especially after the back of such a fantastic run of pay-per-views that WWE were having. They had, you know, WrestleMania, they had that incredible Backlash show, they had Money in the Bank in London, and then SummerSlam, I felt just underdelivered. Matches I was looking forward to, like Drew v. Gunther. We saw the three-way at Mania Night 2, which was excellent, and I just thought their singles match was a bit meh, which considering the year Gunther had, was a bit disappointing. And then that incredibly long main event, which literally put me to sleep. It wasn't a terrible show, but of all the ones I saw this year, and considering I did pay and spent a lot of money to go to it, I guess that has to be my pick. But, you know, you also we were there for Rio cashing in and winning the title, and there was good stuff on that show as well. But I do think it was the end of a very good run that WWE had in 2023.
I'm jumping on that because I also picked SummerSlam as my worst pay-per-view. I also was there, also spent money to go. But at the end of the day, like I didn't have a bad time.
I don't regret going.
Yeah,
I regretted going to Rampage. I didn't regret going to SummerSlam.
We had a ton of fun. They took over downtown Detroit. It was super cool to see the city come alive and people going to this event. Everyone was in good spirits, but there was a lot of bad wrestling on it. There was some good stuff, but like everything on it was just kind of meh, and everything kind of let me down. You kind of mentioned the Gunther match. I'd say the Seth Finn Balor match also kind of let me down. LA Knight won this like Slim Jim Battle Royal, which was like, okay, even when he was like the most over characters. But then the main event literally put Davey to sleep. And if you're laughing at that, don't worry, because where I was sitting, Davey was beside me asleep. My girlfriend was beside me asleep on the other side. Our other friend who was on the other side was also asleep. The four people in front of me also asleep. Oh, I can keep going because I have a video of fucking hundreds of people in this loud ass 40,000+ stadium, whatever thing, sleeping during a main event match. So yeah,
like way too long.
So 36 minutes something, like just insane. So yeah, I still had a fun time going to the show. And when WWE takes over a city, they really do. But at the end of the day, coming back, I'm like, that show kind of sucked. Even Cody Brock was like,
I like Cody Brock. I thought Cody Brock was good, but
yeah,
apart from that.
So I do pick that as worst pay-per-view.
Well, if Davey can include a new category, I think I can include one too, from that particular weekend, and I think we're all going to vote for it. I'm not going to say it was the worst show, but the worst wrestling venue was Harpo's for ECW.
Oh, Davey didn't go to that. Yeah, I went. We
Davey
went to
didn't
that.
go, dude. I have never seen Way have a
Yeah,
worse
can I
time
change
at
my
a
pick?
wrestling event.
Was that the one they
God.
advertised Jeff Hardy, and then he came out at the very end and just went, "Hey guys, thanks. Come to my
That
concert."
was unbearable.
It
I went
was
to
so
baseball that
hot
day.
in this building that it was just criminal for these performers to have to perform under, much less us with.
And we were warned actually before we got there.
Yeah, that was a tough
Hot and
watch.
sweaty.
Just
We had the fan.
venue-wise.
We had the fan, and then people were passing blunts. I still had a good time, but it was real hot and sweaty. And
You know what
dirty.
was lovely though? After that evening, going to that bar and Derek
David's
just
friend bought drinks
providing
for the
us
entire
with
city.
Miller High Life.
Oh yeah. We went really hard in Detroit, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're hardcore. We party in Detroit.
On to best promotion. The last 2 years, it's been a clean sweep of AEW. Will the streak continue? I will start, and I am going this year with WWE as the best promotion. I think creatively, they had a gigantic rejuvenation. I think just of audience and fan engagement, it is night and day from the Vince McMahon period to now. And more importantly, it was reflected in their business, from live events to just all of these markers that they set in 2023. They went through a merger. They went through, at a time when this company could not possibly book a babyface. They now have an overabundance of them. They are now in a position where they have too many main events for nights of WrestleMania that they have. Like the matches that they have at their disposal, that their audience wants. It's just overall, like it's the biggest money generating company by leaps and bounds. And now it is coupled with a fan engagement that at a time when they could have greatly struggled with television numbers, like they have held up remarkably well. Like this past season, they were up against Monday Night Football on both ABC and ESPN, with the games being simulcast. And, Raw, they have taken some of their lumps on certain weeks, but overall, like they were just up against that massive audience for the Rose Bowl. And you've got The Rock coming back, and dude, they did a tremendous number last Monday. They have so much interest that I think like they were the clear promotion of the year. But let us see if there are other options as well. We'll go to Davey next for best promotion.
It could be a clean sweep because I'm also going with WWE. It completely got my interest again this year after years of being kind of a jaded fan. I mentioned earlier that incredible run of pay-per-views at the beginning of the year. Making the decision to go to different markets, going to Montreal, going to Puerto Rico, going to London. They're going to be going to Australia next month, going to Berlin and Paris and France and all this. But just for the first time in years, having top baby faces that people care about,
and isn't it wild that when the product is being received better, like you're not getting these fans hijacking the shows, the fans that just want to make it about them. Isn't it wild that when a product is better received, the audience responds in kind? It's a wild thing to experience.
Exactly. The TV's been way better. I don't work Monday night, so I often throw on Raw in the background whilst doing stuff, and I've actually been quite enjoying it. There's been some good matches on there. NXT's turned itself around completely. You mentioned the business side has been great, but yeah, I just think it's been such a much more enjoyable product in the last year. Hell froze over as well. They got CM Punk back, something that people never thought was going to happen. I think they had a hell of a year. The creative's been good. I like how there's long-term storylines now, and people don't forget things that happened 3 years ago. These characters are human beings that everything they've done in their life informs the person they are today. It's not that, oh, well, tomorrow I'm going to be a heel and therefore the character I was before this doesn't exist. Everything makes sense. And I as a fan, appreciate that.
How about you, Wei?
Yeah, this was an interesting category to decide on this year, because, going through a lot of our picks in the other categories, a lot of our choices are AEW choices. Yet when I think about best promotion overall, I agree it's the WWE this year. And I guess I ask myself why. And I feel like there are a lot of peaks and valleys when it comes to AEW's product this year. A lot of highs are the highest highs you can have, maybe as a professional wrestling fan, certainly in ring. But for me, watching every single week to week, to me, the consistency belongs to the WWE. I think their storytelling, you're finally seeing a WWE that is taking full advantage of its tremendous resources, where they can now actually, go out and hire the best wrestlers, hire the best creatives. And when you don't have this sort of huge obstacle in a Vince McMahon stopping you from achieving your potential, you got to see what the WWE could achieve this year. Being able to, I think, satisfy international audiences, being able to creatively satisfy viewers. They're allowing their talents to actually grow, and they've done a great job of building new stars over the past year as well. So I go with the WWE.
All things that you can also say about WOW Women of Wrestling, right, Braden? Is your pick?
I mean, yeah, you got to give an honorable mention to WOW. They've just been knocking it out the park with such characters as Goldie Collins, the dog trainer, who's a personal favorite, BK Rhythm, the white rapper. I'm trying to think of what else. The governor's daughter. Yeah, WOW is obviously not my pick, but I do love WOW. Don't get me wrong, and you can watch it on CHCH. But this is weird because AEW had a fantastic year. They did Wembley Stadium. They had 90,000 fans or whatever the number is that they said that Ospreay got tattooed on his arm. But like, as much as I love them, yeah, like the proof is in the pudding of WWE being the best they've ever been in. Fantastic. Like, they've just been so good this year. I don't watch Raw and SmackDown as much as maybe I should. And I still don't like it when I do, but their pay-per-views
There's still my promotion of the year.
But their pay-per-views were so good. Like WrestleMania, both nights were the best maybe in years. Since like being a fan, I felt like it was like the best weekend of a WrestleMania that they've had in so long. And yeah, like you said, they brought Punk back. They had this crazy run with Roman Reigns and Sammy, and just like planning things outside. I think Triple H taking over creative shows like what they can do and where they'll go in the future. And yeah, as much as I still love AEW's shows a bit more, I think overall, like, WWE just killed it. I think of all the friends or like casual fans that kind of jumped back on to wrestling this year because it was just so captivating. And like you said, there's so many characters that you can jump on. You can be such a fan of Cody, and you can be such a fan of Roman, and now Punk is back. And it's just like, there's so much things going on, and you can't dismiss some of the good stuff AEW's done this year, but in overall, WWE has really done a good job.
We've noticed hosting these events, these watch parties, did WrestleMania nights 1 and 2 and Survivor Series, which sold out pretty quickly. We tried to do one for Double or Nothing, and the interest just wasn't there, so we pulled the plug on it.
Yeah,
like it's got people again.
Yeah, The Rock coming back too. Like, it's just like things coming back. WWE is just kind of kicking it and going into full gear mode and just going back the way it kind of was. And it's very interesting to see. So yeah, as much as I really loved AEW's pretty much like overall matches and stuff, but when it comes to everything as a whole, like WWE is still just killing it this year. Vince is gone, so
So we move on over to worst promotion. Last year, me and Braden went with the NWA, and Way and Davey chose Wrestling Entertainment Series.
Oh, yeah.
The hell is that?
AOP. They're back.
Exactly. Yes. Oh. AOP's legacy outside of WWE. So this year, let us start off. I'm just going to get mine out of the way. I don't consider this a cop-out. I know it's not professional wrestling, but it's got to fit in somewhere to encapsulate the year that was 2023. My worst promotion was Power Slab. Way.
Oh,
I didn't know that qualified.
Yeah, I didn't know that qualified, John.
Well, I'm letting it
changes
qualify.
things.
I'm confused.
It followed pro wrestling.
Oh, okay, right.
It's something.
I mean, I didn't watch a second of it, but I suppose, again, this was a tough one because, like, again, of all the wrestling that I watch, I thought everything was really good. So, we might like be looking back at 2023 being able to say, wow, look how great WWE is. And look how, by contrast, bad AEW was. That's really not the story. both companies had very good years. Professional wrestling is great right now. So I of the things I watch regularly, I really can't pick a worse promotion. But I guess if I had to pick now, knowing that this qualifies, I'm going to go with Power Slap as well.
Can I just pick that too? Because I agree with Way. It's like I don't want to pick some like really.
Well, what did you have before?
I had NWA, and it's not that I've sat through that unfortunate pay-per-view because that sounds terrible, but it was just one line from Billy Corgan, who's like, if you don't like Tyrus, then you don't like professional wrestling. And it's like, bro, get out of here. So I've checked out some of NWA, and I tell you, it stinks. It really does.
Yeah, I've got to break my own rule of picking something I don't watch, and it is NWA. Just everything, from a promotional point of view, they don't do anything that makes me want to watch what they're providing. So it makes it the worst promotion.
Fair enough
for me.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's a great rationale for it. You shouldn't be watching your winner.
Don't watch it.
The worst by reputation.
Exactly.
Final three, and then we got to get into likely unlikely. So we're gonna keep things moving here. Match of the year. There was a lot of options for 2023. And we might go all over the place. Maybe we will be unanimous. But Braden, kick things off for your best match of 2023.
What were last year's?
Last year, yes. Let's look at last year. I had FTR and the Briscoes, the double dog collar match from Final Battle. Way, you went with Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins from Hell in a Cell. And both Braden and Davey went with Sami Zayn versus Johnny Knoxville from Night 2 of WrestleMania.
Yeah, right. Well, my pick this year is pretty similar to my pick last year. And it's Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay, part 2 in Toronto, the one we are at live, in Forbidden Door 2 in Toronto, the Scotiabank Arena. Yeah, this was incredible. 2 of my favorite wrestlers of all time finally meeting for the second time. I loved their part 1 at the Wrestle Kingdom show in Tokyo Dome. I've watched both these matches back a bunch. I've shown both these matches. I kind of count them as one, as weird as that sounds. Obviously, I'm being biased because I was at the second one, so I'm obviously going to pick that one. But it just felt so incredible being there live, and even watching it back. The kick out of the one-winged angel at 1 from Will Ospreay, from Kenny, from Will Ospreay. Yeah, the Tiger Driver, the shock of it all happening. I even like the Canadian flag being used. What's that little kid we know? Steven, who was there in the front row, got the flag at the very end there back.
The Shawn Michaels spot.
Yeah. Just like it had the like violence of Will just like getting revenge on Kenny from the first match, just like beating him to a pulp. But it had a bit of like the sports entertainment stuff with that flag and like some of the stuff. So I just really got sucked into that match, and don't think I've ever felt like my like soul leave my body while being at a wrestling match when like I said, the kickouts and the Tiger Drivers and the finish. So it really was up between this and their first encounter at the Tokyo Dome. But I just love this match so much, and I watch it often now. So yeah, I'm going with these 2, and I can't wait if we maybe one day get a part 3 rubber match.
Davey, you were nodding there. Is this also your pick, or did you have something else?
It's my pick as well. Yeah, like just an incredible match. Being there live, the atmosphere, the buzz from the crowd from that kick out on 1, and just the gasp of horror from that Tiger Driver 91, just dumping Kenny on his head. In a year where, Kenny didn't have a whole lot of singles matches, and that's what I want to see him in. Obviously, he's had health issues and stuff, but I want to see him in big singles matches, and to get that like in our hometown, just down the road from us, sitting there watching it. And in my opinion, they did go above and beyond their first match, which was still excellent. It's probably my number 2. An incredible series of matches, and can't wait for if and when they do a part 3.
Well, I did go with the first match. I went with Wrestle Kingdom 17. I just like both matches. I don't think you can go wrong with either pick. I think that Omega and Ospreay, first of all, the first match, you can't mention it without the promo from the press conference from Will Ospreay. That was the best promo of his career. And I think if he can channel that, now that he's going to be in positions where he's going to be cutting a lot more promos on a weekly basis. I mean, that that was a very unique set of circumstances, and talking about, coming to New Japan, keeping the doors open during COVID and such. Like it was outstanding. And then the match, you watch this, I think it would be among people's best matches that they had ever seen. It would be in that type of conversation. And the second match, I mean, you had to follow this one in January as well. So I can understand why people lean towards that one, but I gave the nod to Wrestle Kingdom 17. Wei, your pick.
I want to give an honorable mention. My favorite women's match I saw this year was Queen's Quest versus Oedo Tai from Stardom Sunshine, their elimination cage match. As somebody who only steps into Stardom very occasionally, I was plenty impressed at the amount of storytelling that was involved in a match like this. Simply coming down to a very emotional, climax by the end. My match of the year, though, was not any of the two that you chose, but it was Sora Strickland versus Hangman Page, the Texas Death Match from Full Gear. I maybe think by the end of the year of the match that I want to remember this year for the most, and it is incredibly unusual that I think deathmatch wrestling is able to be presented on such a big stage, and I think for it to receive as much positive acclaim as it has, this was the most visceral sort of reaction I've had to any professional wrestling match. I feel like an Ospreay versus Omega, both of them, they're incredible, but I feel like I've seen versions of that in prior years. This is probably the only year where I feel like I'll have this match, to remember by. And it's not just because of the gore. It's not just about, I think, of maybe the shock value attached to it, but I think there was legitimately great storytelling here. You're talking about a guy who is getting revenge for somebody threatening his child, his baby, breaking into his home. And so, of course, you would justify somebody's use of a staple gun multiple times. You would justify even the feeling of drinking that person's blood because you just want to kill that person. I thought they effectively conveyed all of that and delivered just an incredible performance with both of them, or Swerve mainly, I guess, half dead here, nailing a lot of creativity into this, but also flawlessly executing a lot of the technique that I think they're called upon to do on a big stage. So I'll always remember this match. It's my match of the year.
I'm just going to throw in a few honorable mentions too that I did not mention, but certainly, bell to bell, was this going to be my match of the year? No, but I think we look above and beyond, especially in this climate, for things that are going to resonate with you, that you're going to feel something from. And in terms of a match presentation, I don't know if anything was better this year than the Muto retirement with Tetsuya Naito. I thought, and I went into this where I wasn't necessarily, I was just curious to see if they could pull this off in any meaningful fashion. And from the way that they presented Muto's retirement with the video and then the entrances, and here they came out, and all we're talking about is Muto doing a moonsault. And if this guy's going to destroy his knees, and it's a spot where he climbs up and he knows he can't do it. And it turned into this really it suddenly became more than just a wrestling match. It was this man's own fight with his understanding of his mortality. And then you got again, it was nothing special. If you're just watching this without any context or without the understanding, but then you get Muto and the person he is forever linked with in Masahiro Chono right afterwards. In terms of a retirement presentation, I don't know if anything has ever hit this level that I have seen. I just thought that it was a wonderful presentation of professional wrestling with a character that has many, you can say plenty negative about in Muto, professionally, personally, but I mean, in terms of what, and they drew over 30,000 people. This beat the Tokyo Dome last year and this year for New Japan. So this meant a lot. And I don't know how many more of these they have of figures in Japanese wrestling culture that can elicit such an attention for their retirement, at least of that era of wrestlers.
There's a few honorable mentions this year. There was so many great matches. You talk about not just bell to bell, but the WrestleMania Night 1, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens versus the Usos with Lil Uzi Vert there for reasons. That match was incredible. I think of
Gunther, Drew, and Sheamus at WrestleMania. That was one of the best WrestleMania matches I think ever. That was
exactly.
up there, and that kind of just got, so many matches get lost in the shuffle because they come at such a fast clip that you forget about some of these.
Danielson, Zack Sabre Jr.
That
is
one is
like
up there, man.
third for me.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
that
Danielson
match
and
was just-
MJF, the
Yeah,
Broadway
the
match.
Iron Man.
I also have you rewatched the Moxley Hangman death match recently? Because
No, I have not.
I threw that on yesterday doing our top 10 list, and man, like I think I love the Swerve match as well, but I think there's a lot of recency bias as well because man, that death match, I got the same feeling as that Swerve match.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
There were so many good matches. This year was hard to pick, but obviously Ospreay having this incredible year and like the feud with Kenny kind of kicking it off with those two matches stand out. But there's so like Danielson, you mentioned earlier, like the run of matches he had. MJF, man, really helped carry AEW. He had some great matches on TV and pay-per-view as well. But there was like so many belt to belt. Orange Cassidy with the IC title run on Dynamite. Moxley,
the Mox match,
like there was some just really good wrestling, all companies. So it was a great year to be a fan.
Okay, now we go to the prestigious worst match of the year. Last year, myself, Way, and Braden went with Vince McMahon versus Pat McAfee. Davey, you chose the men's Royal Rumble match from 2022.
Yeah.
So we are now going to go to a new list for worst matches of the year, and we'll start off with Braden.
Oh, man. Okay, up till today, I had a worst match of the year. It was Tribal Combat, because I mentioned legit in my view were like hundreds of people sleeping at a main event WWE pay-per-view. However, today I watched EC3 versus Tyrus from NWA 75 in a bull rope match. Way already had the graphic loaded. And boy, like you go into this being like, oh, how bad can it be? It's bad. Almost as bad as EC3's tattoos. It's very fucking bad. So funny. The commentary, I think Velvet Sky on commentary. Yeah. She acts as if this is Cody v. Roman at WrestleMania. Bless her. It's her job to help get the thing over.
I did a good job because I was in another room and thought, this sounds like a hell of a match.
And then you come in and then
right now.
Tyrus does the splash and you're like, what the fuck is this? So, wow. Like legit should be held accountable for being that fucking awful. And Billy Corgan, if you don't like Tyrus, you're not a wrestling fan. Sorry, not a wrestling fan, I guess. Wow, holy shit, man, this was bad. It was so funny though. I recommend it, to be honest. But I will say, Tribal Combat was pretty bad and was my pick up until today. But yeah.
Well, I will admit I didn't watch EC3 and Tyrus this year. I saw plenty of highlights.
I'll link you
call highlights, that's okay. I'm not going to pick something that I did not see. I thought there were a few candidates here. Amazingly, we got Brock Lesnar and Omos and Shane McMahon and Miz at WrestleMania 39. Each of which I could go with, but I am going to go for a more recent match. And it's very rare that we see these on national television where something just completely falls apart in front of our eyes. And that was Rhea Ripley against Maxine from December 11th, a few weeks ago. I mean, it was a case of, I think, Maxine, who is only a handful of matches into her career, just thrown way too far into the deep end on live television. And this is what happened. I think sometimes we take for granted when we see a Bad Bunny or people that have rehearsed their matches over and over, and you have the luxury of the PC to prepare all of this. And this is not someone in Maxine who is out there working house shows every weekend that then gets to a television match. Like she has had, I think, 2 singles matches in her career. And I don't put the fault necessarily on her. Like this was just, way over your head to do just a singles match on television. But it does tell us, like, in this era where match quality is at such a high, we don't typically see something like this happen on national television. But that was my pick. Worst match of the year.
I want to give honorable mention to Britt Baker versus Taya Valkyrie from AEW Dynamite. 2 very good wrestlers, but not with each other for whatever reason. Just a lot of unusual botches and just a real lack of chemistry for 2 veterans. And I hope they get the chance to redo it and maybe do their actual sort of skill level justice. But I too took the time to watch EC3 versus Iris. Specifically,
I
for
like
this
how both of
category.
you are such professionals that you knew you wanted to pick this, but you
Yeah,
did feel
yeah.
I have to watch it to confirm my thoughts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
I think
Journalist.
I have to be extra hard on a match that's supposed to be at the very top of a card to sell a pay-per-view. And for the length that these two went out there and for the quality that they delivered, it lived up to the billing, honestly, as what a lot of people are choosing, maybe as last year's worst
This
match
was his
of the year.
retirement match, right?
Yes.
For the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Yeah.
Well, you can find out more on Fox News with Tyrus. There we have it. Was that everyone?
Davey,
your worst match?
Yeah, I caught a bit of that match when Braden was watching it. It wasn't good. I'm gonna stick to Tribal Combat. Same reasons I said with
because you were asleep.
Yeah, because I was asleep. But I see in the room people saying the Texas Chainsaw Massacre death match between Jeff Jarrett and Jeff Hardy. But I can't possibly pick that because Braden and I had such a fun time because we were in the airport lounge in Pearson Airport before our trip to London, and we had unlimited drinks in the lounge.
Open bar in this lounge.
Open bar, as much food as we can eat, and we were watching AEW on my laptop and had a great time watching this match.
Yeah,
so
you got to
I
appreciate.
Could not possibly pick that.
Yeah, the wrestle crap of this, like it's so good. And we were watching this on Davey's laptop. We're doing shots in this bar, and
businessmen in this
walking by,
around,
they're like, "What the fuck are these guys watching? Who's this chainsaw guy?" So you can't pick that as the worst match because it was so good. But yeah,
Why is chainsaw 2 words on this graphic?
Chainsaw. Also a Women of Wrestling roster member, superstar. Chainsaw. She's got a giant chainsaw on her leg.
Nice.
All right. Those are our worst matches of the year. And now we bring it up to our final award of the year. It is biggest story of the year. And this is funny because 2 years ago, it was a clean sweep, CM Punk's return. Last year, it was a clean sweep, Vince McMahon's resignation. So things that have nothing to do with the past year. So now we go to story of the year. I'm going to start things off, and I don't think you got anything bigger than the TKO merger between WWE and UFC. The ramifications of which I think are still to be truly discovered between these companies, what it means for each side, what it means for their television deals, pay-per-view, as in terms of like how we're going to be consuming all of these different products as well. These are a lot of powerful figures that are now under the same roof, and a big question about like what Vince McMahon's future will be in this entity. If he is going to have a meaningful role in this company, is this going to be a title that he holds? But I mean, it's very evident from WWE. Like we are living in a time now where outside of the period that he stepped away due to the scandal in 2022, like this is the most out of power in terms, or I should say, like lack of influence that Vince McMahon has on the WWE product you're consuming at the moment. So next up, biggest story of the year.
There are a lot of big stories over the past year. The deaths of Bray Wyatt and Terry Funk, the death of Jay Briscoe. CM Punk is fired. CM Punk is back, and all of those were big in their own right. But I suppose for like a industry changing type of story, I do have to also agree that it's Endeavor buying WWE, merging it with the UFC to form TKO. It's a story that I mean maybe might not be as salacious or attractive to talk about or to gossip about, but it's one with huge ramifications that we might not even be completely privy to. And I think that's maybe their goal, is to make everything feel as normal and as same as possible. But internally, in the years to come, I mean, it's hard to think of a bigger story than the WWE being sold off to somebody else.
Braden, what was the biggest story of the year?
Yeah, it's possibly a clean sweep. I mean, this was everywhere. Being a wrestling fan pretty much all my life, this is something that's like, oh, wow, okay, this is changing things. And obviously merging with UFC and Endeavor and TKO, all that stuff, it's pretty wild and was talk of everything. Like I work at a TV station. It was all our news were covering it. Every news station was covering it. And it was making waves and rounds everywhere where people were like asking. I mean, you work at a bar and we hang out at bars all the time. People kept being like, "Oh man, you hear about this like UFC and WWE? They're gonna do shows together." It's like, well, kind of not really, but like it just went everywhere. And to see Vince McMahon kind of finally like sell and do this is pretty crazy. A bigger story could be what happens if Endeavor need to sell in 2024 or going forward. Like it's crazy that this has happened, and it kind of, I think as a fan looking at it, you kind of think like, well, maybe this is a good thing because WWE, like I said, has had a good year, and if so far the change is making it good again, then who knows where we could go in the next while. But yeah, easily the biggest story.
Davey?
Yeah, that was a big story, but the story that just kept on giving was CM Punk.
Hell froze over.
It kept going, and that's why I like stories with chapters. WWE sold, it's done. We'll see what happens. But we were at Wembley, we were sat in our seats, and I'm like on my phone, and I'm getting the like Sean Ross Sapp updates that a scuffle's happened backstage, and we're with some friends who are like non-fans, and they're like, wait, is this story? It's like, no, apparently Punk's just punched Luke Perry's kid backstage.
Luke Perry's
and
kid.
Then it came up to like all the other details coming out. Then it was on my birthday. I was at my birthday dinner and get the news that CM Punk's been fired. So rushing home to watch Collision, see what's happening there. And then fast forward right through to him showing up at Survivor Series. So yeah, obviously the sale, the merger is huge, but this story just kept on giving us more and more as the year went on, and was just kind of fascinating to see everything that happened. And there is something like, I'd kind of be excited for an update. All right, who else did he punch? Tony was fearing for his life. Monitors fell over. He was throwing monitors at people.
The best was people were like, no, that's not true. It can't happen. And then people were like, hey, did you notice Samoa Joe's entrance? He's got blood on him. And people were like, wait a second, something did happen. And
then there's stuff coming out that apparently Miro and him were having a fight, but it was just they were joking about having a fight because he's already fought with other people. I don't know. It was fun. Like, it was fun to follow for me.
I don't know if it was so fun for Tony Khan, but yeah.
He's got money. I don't.
Way also mentioned like the people that passed away this year, and there were quite a number of like big names in addition to Bray Wyatt, Terry Funk, and Jay Briscoe. This past year, superstar Billy Graham passed away. You had as well Lanny Poffo, the Genius, Killer Khan, Jerry Jarrett, Adrian Street, Billy Two Rivers, Bushwhacker Butch passed away, Darren Drozdoff, Emile Dupree, Iron Sheik. Some really sizable names in the industry, and those are just a handful of them as well. So that was the year of 2023. So that has wrapped up our 21 categories. And if no one is going to pass out from exhaustion, we are now going to play likely, unlikely. But first of all, we have to go back to last year, and I will go through these very quickly. We had a ton of submissions last year, so we'll make these brief. MJF goes undefeated with the title all year long. Well, he came up a day short. All of us said unlikely, so all of us were correct. Kota Ibushi has a match in an AEW ring. Davey was the only one who said unlikely. Wei said likely, but did caution, we don't know about his health status.
Oh,
Wei's always on point with the
Wei was very on point there.
A wrestling promotion streams exclusively on TikTok. All of us said unlikely to that. The Undisputed Era.
Hold on a second.
Wait. That happened though. That did
a wrestling promotion that streams.
We
had
Sukuban.
Yeah.
Skibon. Yeah.
Was it just TikTok? It was. You're right. It was. You're right. I totally forgot about that. It was just on TikTok, wasn't it?
Wow.
So
That's
there
why
you
I
have it.
haven't
We
watched
were all
it.
wrong.
I think Corey submitted that one.
He did. Yes.
He knew something.
These were all listener submissions, most of them at least.
Okay.
The Undisputed Era reunite on WWE programming. We have an Undisputed reuniting, but not on WWE programming, and not as the Undisputed
I guess they
Era.
haven't jumped yet.
Yeah.
Rhea Ripley wins the IC or US title. Wei and I said unlikely. Braden and Davey were more open to this idea, which did not happen.
Can I say it for this year? I'm going to say likely.
Okay, we're not doing it like that, Braden, but just follow along. Vince McMahon and Elon Musk appear on WWE programming. All of us said unlikely to this one. We got no Vince McMahon and no Elon Musk. He was busy this past year. Let's just keep it at that. Rampage moves to a new time slot. Braden was the only one who said likely on that one. Rampage, Friday nights at 10, still after all this time.
Wait a second. Every time I try to watch Rampage, it's on a different day and a different channel and a different thing. So, like, really, I think maybe.
Yeah, you were wrong. ROH finds a TV home. All of us said unlikely to that. It remains on Honor Club. Miro returns to WWE. Unlikely, we all said. And here he is, still with AEW. Roderick Strong joins AEW. To which Braden stated, well, wait a minute. He's still in a wheelchair from NXT. And
Wow.
He rolled right in.
But all of us did say likely that Roderick Strong goes to AEW, which is crazy when this guy, I feel he's been on AEW for years at this point, and he just
crazy.
joined this year. Donald Trump goes to prison. We all said unlikely. Stardom holds a show in the US. All of us said likely. Not happening. Didn't happen this last year, but will happen in 2024. Jade Cargill loses the TBS title. All of us get a point for saying likely. Davey gets an extra point for predicting Chris Statlander would beat Jade Cargill for the title.
Nice.
Thanks.
You predicted Chris Statlander?
Yeah.
Vince McMahon creates his own non-wrestling league. We said unlikely. Way said likely on that one. He did not.
League of
does TKO
Mustaches?
John Moxley and Renee are on screen together, and we kind of turned this into like whether they would do any kind of like storyline together, which we all said unlikely, and they did not. Like I can't even recall like Renee interviewing John Moxley on screen. I'm sure it's happened, but it's exceptionally rare.
Hangman had some stuff with like there has been stuff where Renee's been like sort your shit out with like
They've
Eddie and
acknowledged
Mox
it,
and
but
Hangman and Mox and
yeah,
stuff.
it's very subdued other than like the Eddie Kingston stuff. And yeah, when it came up with Hangman, the Blackpool Combat Club visit Blackpool, England. I was the only one who said likely, thinking that they would do a vignette or something when they go over to England, but they didn't. Sami Zayn gets a run with the WWE or the Universal title. This predates the Seth Rollins title. All of us said unlikely, but Davey said the best ending to the story is Sami Zayn beating The Rock. Maybe another year.
Wow,
All
that's
right.
a prediction.
CM Punk wrestles in WWE. Now, the wording was wrestles in WWE, not appears in WWE, and he did make it into the ring on December 26th and December 30th. However, we all said unlikely to this.
Wow.
So he did make it.
Amazing.
CM Punk wrestles in AEW. All of us said likely to that, and the man did wrestle in AEW this year. AEW wins Best Promotion of 2023. All of us said likely. All of us were wrong.
Wow.
John Pollock eats cereal this year. We said unlikely. I can confirm.
What about chips?
Happen. No chips.
Oh.
John Cena wrestles at WrestleMania. We all said likely. Correct on that. Ric Flair wrestles again. Braden was the only one sadistic enough to say likely. He did not wrestle this year. Did bumps, but no wrestling.
Sure he
Jake
did.
Paul has a pro wrestling match. Braden and Davey said likely. He did not. Patty Pimblett appears on AEW. I think this was Davey's suggestion. Me and Way
Sorry,
said
who?
likely. Patty the Baddie.
Oh, okay, right, yes.
You came up with this one. And,
Yeah.
not
I didn't
us.
know his last name. I just
Okay. Dana White appears on AEW to promote Power Slap. I said unlikely. I think you three all said likely that this would happen.
Yeah, they had ads for it, but
Yeah, he never appeared on there. We get the first mass release of the Paul Levesque era in WWE. Way said likely. I strongly disagreed that we would see this happen this year, but Way was correct. And Braden and Davey didn't really weigh in one way or the other. NXT Europe has its first event. Way was the only one who said likely. NXT Europe, still a thought. And then I'm just gonna skim through some of these. Jeff Hardy wrestles in AEW. All of us said likely. He was on his exit after the arrest in 2022 at this point. Sasha Banks returns to the WWE. Unlikely. Braden says unlikely for this year, but we'll see after. And then Braden said, what about Naomi joining the Bloodline? So we will see if any of those happen. The Hardy family office is still a thing. All of us said unlikely. WWE buys a Japanese company. All of us said unlikely, but I stated if there was one, it would be All Japan. That they
whoa, I
We'll
mean,
see if that
close.
happens.
Yeah.
We'll see if it happens. More than one New Japan show takes place at the Tokyo Dome. Braden and I said likely. They only did one show at the Tokyo Dome. Way does a road trip review with Poison Rana. Way said likely. I don't think that happened this year. This would be a follow-up to Freddie Got Fingered.
Yeah, we didn't drive in the same car to Detroit. I think we went with different people. So we'll have to make good Way.
No. He means the movie Road Trip.
The movie, the Tom Green.
Oh,
Let's do it.
oh, I thought you wanted to go on a road trip with us, which also is cool. But road trip doesn't measure up to Freddy Got Fingered, does it?
It's not nearly as wild in Tom Green.
I will say, Tom Green literally performed like
He
today.
did 2
or
nights at
yesterday.
I know.
Yucca.
He
Yeah.
keeps running into people at different bars downtown. He like live streams and just walks around. He seems like a real nice guy.
He live streams like all the time,
Yeah.
and it's the most mundane things. So yeah.
Yeah.
Wade's
there
just got a
elephants in
screen
Road
dedicated
Trip?
to it.
Is there-
Are there any elephants in Road Trip?
is there
I don't believe so.
sausages?
There's a mouse.
Strange.
Muto does a moonsault. We all said likely for the retirement. And the last one, Davie Portman attends Grand Slam. Davie was the only one who said unlikely, and turned out he was right.
I didn't. It's the only reason I didn't go.
It's like the one show you
I
didn't
wanted
go
to be right.
All of us said likely. We thought Davie would cave in the end and go, but he did not. So there you go. Those were our likely and unlikelies for 2022. I have asked everyone to come up with a short list of about like 5 to 10 each. So we'll rapid fire these. Let's start off, Braden, with your scenarios, and we'll just go around the horn.
I'm sure we have some similar ones, but likely or unlikely, Cody Rhodes finishes the story. I'm going to say
Likely.
unlikely.
I'm going to say unlikely.
Unlikely.
I'm
Yeah.
saying unlikely.
Unlikely.
Wow, I'm the only person saying likely. Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. CM Punk main events WrestleMania. Likely.
Which night?
What's a main
Like-
event?
Either night?
Night one.
Likely.
Likely.
Yeah, likely.
CM Punk is still employed by the WWE by this time next year.
Likely.
Or
I'm going to be an optimist. Yeah, likely.
Yeah, I don't
Likely
want
as well.
punching people. Yeah, no punching people, Phil. Likely. Raw stays on USA Network. Likely or unlikely?
That's a good one.
Unlikely.
I'm going likely.
I'm going unlikely.
Wow.
Unlikely.
Whoa.
I'm going to say unlikely as well, just because they
Oh.
have SmackDown.
Okay. I think I said this last year and I was wrong. So I'm just going to try to bring it into fruition here. Rampage or Collision is canceled. Likely or unlikely?
Unlikely.
Okay.
I'm going to say likely.
I'm going to say
Rampage.
likely as well.
I
To
think it moves.
Rampage. Oh, okay. Okay. This one's easy. Swerve winning the world title in 2024.
Likely.
Likely.
Fine, I'll say unlikely.
Ooh, he's switching things up on here. AJ Lee shows up in the Royal Rumble. I'm going to say likely.
Likely.
Let's light it up.
Unlikely.
Unlikely. I feel like maybe we're still a years away.
What else do I have? Bill Goldberg shows up in TNA. Or
Unlikely. Unlikely.
Sorry, Dave.
He's the big signing.
You think he's the
Likely.
big sign?
I'll say likely too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wembley.
I'm gonna. Wait.
Whoa, no, he said TNA.
Oh, you said TNA. Sorry.
Yes.
Wait. You want me to rephrase that way? You think Bill Goldberg signing with AEW?
I mean, I feel like
way
that's
better
more
probability than TNA, I would say.
likely. Yeah,
Okay.
TNA. No, TNA. would be
Okay.
no. I
All
misheard.
right.
I'm
Wow.
sorry.
I like that one.
Maybe Wade thought TNA's running Wembley.
Yeah.
What else do I
Probably
have here?
rebrand.
Gunther wins a world title in 2024.
Oh,
Likely.
Likely.
sure, I'll say likely on that one.
All right. Does anyone else have any?
We
Yeah.
all have some. So
Okay.
I'll go next.
okay, Wade's turn.
Nick Aldis wins a WWE championship.
Unlikely.
Unlikely.
Do you mean a world championship or just
No.
any title?
Any title. I'll say unlikely.
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 Looks
Okay,
good
how
to
about
see.
Nick Aldis wrestles a WWE match?
Likely.
Likely.
Interesting. Okay, I'm gonna go unlikely and then likely as well for those ones. Dana White appears on WWE TV.
Likely.
Likely.
Unlikely.
Unlikely for me as well. A WWE wrestler speaks on UFC TV. Or
Likely.
pay-per-view.
Like is
Likely.
interviewed or something?
Yeah.
At a
Likely.
pay-per-view?
Yeah.
like
yeah,
something of prominence.
I'm gonna say unlikely.
Likely. Like in the crowd. Hey.
Not
like
shown.
Joe
Has to be
Gacy.
interviewed.
What do you think?
He's
of
saying
these?
not shown because they've shown a lot of people, but like
Yeah.
actually saying.
But yeah,
something.
like Mike in their face.
Yeah.
And
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Likely.
Okay.
I'm saying
For any of these things to happen, I feel like it would be during that, like, WrestleMania weekend / like International Fight Week. So we'll probably get our answer at some point. I'm gonna say unlikely to that one. Jade Cargill has a singles 4-star plus match.
a singles 4-star plus match.
that's
So
a
we're
good
going
one.
by the Observer.
By Dave Meltzer's ratings, yes. And she has
Unlikely.
not yet.
Unlikely.
I'm gonna go likely.
Jade wrestles in 2024. Likely or unlikely?
I'll go like. Yeah. why not?
I'm gonna say maybe 3 3/4, but not 4.
Okay, then you'd be wrong if it's only.
Way always adds these things to sound like a genius. The next,
But he's right.
we know he's gonna get.
He knows
Little
things.
caveats.
Okay, I got 2 more here. Braun Breaker wins a main roster championship.
Any title.
Any title? Like I likely think he's showing up on the main roster. You would hope he's the Raw after Mania guy.
I'm going to say unlikely on that.
Unlikely, but I think he's showing up on the main
I
roster.
could see him with like the US title. Yeah, likely.
Okay, I'm gonna say unlikely, maybe for the time being. Last one, Julia wins the NXT Women's Championship.
Likely.
Likely.
Unlikely.
Julia Gulia.
Yeah, I'll
but
say unlikely. Okay, good list from Way. I'll go next, and then Davey can bring us home. Raw airs on another night of the week. It's announced in the new deal.
You sounded like pretty confident that
I'm not confident, but I think it is. It could be possible. I could see SmackDown on Monday and Raw on Wednesday.
So
something
weird.
that.
I'm
Yeah.
sticking unlikely. No, keep it Monday Night Raw.
I'm gonna say unlikely as well, just because I think so much of the value of Raw is contained within just the Monday part of it, and I feel like WWE would have some say over it, but anything can happen.
Okay.
How about you? What do you say?
Oh, I'm going to say likely.
Wow.
Yeah, why not?
Wow.
I have a few here. Okay. The Rock wrestles 2 matches in WWE this year.
2. That's
Unlikely.
Unlikely.
Okay, all unlikelies. MJF and Adam Cole wrestle at All In for the 2nd year in a row.
Ooh.
Not headlining necessarily, but
Yeah,
they have
yeah,
a match at All In.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say likely, but not in the main event.
Yeah, likely not. In
I'm the
minute.
same as Way. Yeah.
Okay, I've got 2 more here. Katsuhiko Nakajima, the Triple Crown holder, wrestles at Stand and Deliver.
That would be pretty cool.
Very specific, but okay.
You know something? No, I'm going to say unlikely.
At Forbidden Door, you said?
No, Stand and
No.
Deliver Mania weekend.
NXT.
Oh. Unlikely.
With the All Japan dealings that they have. If they
Yeah. I guess if there's anybody for maybe a rematch with Charlie Dempsey, I suppose. But I just don't know if WWE is going to make those sort of places for foreign talent anymore. Liger, I feel like it was a bit of a different case, but it's hard for me to think Nakajima would just be coming in unless he was signed. Okay, that would be different. But I'm still going to say unlikely.
Okay. I'll go likely on this. I'm not saying because this is just a random scenario. The last one here, it's mainly for one person, but we'll go around and get everyone. Almas versus Gargano and Chill.
Omos or
No,
Omos or Omos versus Almas.
Almost said
Oh,
Omos.
So he thinks, are we getting Gargano versus Almas one more time? Yes, 100 CN likely.
Yeah. I could be on a Raw. Likely.
Just the
For
Raw.
4 minutes, there'll be his reintroduction.
What's going on with Gargano?
Well, they got DIY going, but we
Kind
got
of.
Andrade leaving AW. He's definitely going back over there with the LWO and stuff. So maybe we do get that match.
I'll
one
say
more time.
likely. We'll get it. I don't know if
Yeah.
we'll reach the Pantheon.
I don't know if I'll chill with it, but
Yeah.
I'll say unlikely, just to be
Yeah,
I'm saying
contrarian.
likely on that.
Likely.
All right. And Davies.
All right. WWE announce a PLE in Japan.
Likely.
Oh.
Likely. I'm surprised they haven't already.
I'm gonna go unlikely on Japan.
I'm gonna go unlikely as well. Man, it's very possible. I just feel like I don't see them getting a site fee for Japan. First of all, I also don't know. Well, they do run events there, but I don't know if it's like a PLE feeling type of territory
Crowd.
for them. Yeah.
Mm. I
say likely.
I'll go likely. AEW announced a show in Mexico.
What? I mean, they should. So likely.
I'll go likely. Sure. I
I'll
think
say-
that's actually a really good idea.
Tell TK.
Alex Abrahantis running the show, Yeah.
What, for everyone?
Yeah.
Seems to be
He'll
doing
just
that
be
for
out with everyone.
all the lucha
Every
guys
luchador.
anyway.
I'll go likely.
I'm gonna go unlikely. It wouldn't surprise me, but it also feels like it might be a sort of a a couple of years from now type of infrastructure that they would have to implement. So I'm gonna say unlikely for next year.
Tama Tonga wrestles in NXT.
I'm gonna say
Unlikely.
So I guess where do you guys think he'll end up?
At NXT, I guess.
I think
yeah.
NXT.
So you said likely, Braden?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'll say likely.
I'm gonna say unlikely.
Do
I
you
said
see him?
unlikely.
Where do you see him?
New
I don't know if
Japan.
NXT. Like, I think he's kind of old.
John says New Japan.
You think he's staying?
Yes. That'd be
Okay.
my guess.
Yeah. I think AEW might be most likely, but on the main roster, like I could see him getting called up to the main roster just due to age.
Sting wrestles a singles match in this retirement tour.
Yes. likely.
I'm going to say unlikely. I
Unlikely.
think it'd be a bad idea at this point.
I would like Sting Darby as
Yeah, I think
as
Sting and
send-off.
Darby would be the last match, so I'm going to say likely.
Thematically, it works, but the result, I just don't see how that's possible at Darby's speed.
NXT Europe has its first event.
Unlikely. Unlikely.
Wait a
Unlikely.
second. Hold on a second. Now, WWE's doing Bash in Berlin
Yeah.
on a weekend, right? What if NXT does a show piggybacking in Europe? Would that count?
No, it
No,
needs
they've
to
got
be
to
branded
announce
NXT Europe?
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't even
alright,
think
well,
that would happen.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna
Then
say no.
unlikely. Okay.
I'll say unlikely.
I'm going to say likely.
Tiffany Stratton wins a main roster championship, singles championship, not tag team.
I'm going to say unlikely, but
Yeah.
very strong chance she'll be
Yeah.
called up.
I see her being called up, like, again, post Mania, but I don't know necessarily she'd be winning the title that quick.
Same.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
Naomi returns to WWE.
Likely.
Mercedes, I'll say likely. Mercedes returns to WWE.
Who?
Mercedes Moné, Sasha Banks.
Returning to WWE.
Yeah.
Unlikely.
Unlikely.
Unlikely this week.
Ha.
Ask me again next
Yeah,
week.
ask me tomorrow and the day after that.
I'm going to say likely.
You think she's going
Yeah,
back?
she can always choke out someone and get
Boss
back
up.
there. Yeah. Drew McIntyre leaves WWE.
Unlikely.
Unlikely. He's
Unlikely.
he's too hot right now for them to let go. I don't think so.
They changed the stakes of the Continental Classic.
Likely. They should.
Oh, I thought you were
Stakes.
going to.
Yeah.
It's for a different championship or
It's
what?
it's either for it's for something different. It's not for these three titles or the Continental title. It's for something else.
But it's called the Continental, so it would be for that Continental.
I feel it's going to be this Continental crown that's put
Yeah.
up for the winner. That's going to be my
Yeah.
thought. So I'll
might
say
not-
unlikely.
It might not be for all three championships, but it'll at least be for the Continental.
Yeah.
That's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
We get clarification on what the fuck the Continental Championship / Triple Crown Championship is. What is it? Is it one title? Is it three titles?
Is it a New Japan Strong title?
Yeah, we get on TV. All right, this is what's happening.
Also, someone should tell Eddie what's going on with the titles,
Eddie
too.
realizes what his titles are. Like some sort of clarification.
I'll say likely, and I'll predict it's like in minute 6 of a 9-minute answer from Tony Khan on a conference call.
I feel like by this time, or like by the time the tournament comes around, I think it'll just be down to that single title.
That
Yeah.
single title.
Yeah.
And finally, likely, unlikely, Leo Rush retires.
Oh, likely. Is he in
Unlikely.
New Japan right now?
Likely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Unlikely.
Right.
All right.
Wow, what a list of great things.
Yeah.
I had to skim through some of the ones from last year, but you did have that one last year too, Davey.
What did we say?
We all said unlikely, but
And I think he did retire once last year, didn't he?
he got hurt this year.
Oh,
Oh.
Anyway.
Well, it counts.
I think so. Yeah.
Well, there you go, everyone. Another riveting game of likely, unlikely for 2024. And you are welcome to put in your own thoughts, your own scenarios in the comment section below. If you want to weigh in on any of these categories or throw up some of your predictions for 2024, because in a year's time, I will be going back to go through likely and unlikely the day of the show. And I will go through the comments to see if anyone says anything enlightening that makes sense a year from now. But I want to thank.
We also have a thread up at forum.postwrestling.com where everybody listening can also leave their picks for all the categories this year.
So for everyone out there that is getting this show for free, you are more than welcome to jump on board at postwrestlingcafe.com. And you can also support Poison Rana. And where can they go for that, Braden?
Patreon.com/poisonrana. Check us out.
Also, any of you listening, if you are in the Toronto area and want to come hang out and watch the Royal Rumble, we will be doing a Royal Rumble watch party at Gabby's 309 King Street West. Tickets are on sale, and use the promo code BDE Friends. All one word to get 50% off those tickets.
Yeah, I mean, this year was crazy for wrestling, but it was pretty crazy for us because not only did we get to do the Forbidden Pour at Real Sports right beside, attached to the Scotiabank Arena for Forbidden Door, we got to meet like so many listeners and people like traveling in for this. But Davey and I have been doing like these like watch parties and wrestling parties like all year. We traveled to London. We did All In It with the Grapple lads. We got to shout out that and anyone who came to that all across the world. I've met people and listeners from all over, and it's just incredible. And I want to thank everyone for taking part, even if you're taking part in spirit to some of these watch parties, wherever you are. We thank you. I love this post wrestling / Poison Rana community and all the people in the chat. And it's been a super fun year, and I'm just grateful to be a part of it. So thank you, John Away, for a fun time. I know we had a fun time at Forbidden Pour when you guys chose to do the review the next day. You were thinking about it. You're like, oh, we got to do the review. It's like, no. Have a few rainmakers.
Tony Khan also did take John hostage for a good.
Oh, yeah, right. That's right.
Braden completely forgets that I wasn't even
there.
But, that's how memorable I am in Braden's memory bank. But yes, I was at a very lengthy press conference. But there you have it, everyone. That is the best and the worst of 2023. Go on over to poisonrana.ca, postwrestling.com. Way and I are back on Monday night with Rewind to Raw. Brand new year. Keep your lists together. Are any of you guys going to try and keep lists throughout the year? Or is it just going to be a mad dash in the final week next year? To do this?
I'm not going to lie. This year, every year I say, yeah, I'm going to do it. No, I'm not. I'll do a mad dash day of, as always.
It's almost kind of pointless. I mean, maybe for like something that was terribly bad that I feel like I'll forget by the end of the year. But it's kind of hard to keep up. But yeah.
We're all going to do the exact same thing as we did this year. It'll come down to the last 48 hours of what jumps out at us. All right. Thanks to everyone that joined us live. All of the patrons out there, we thank you very much. And that is it for the best and worst of 2023.